Chapter 149. How's the situation? Jinjin walked into Baiya's residence. A pale-faced young man was lying on the straw bed. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Jinjin used ultrasound to investigate. Using his ears that had mutated internal structure, he found that Baiya still had some breath. However, this breath was too weak. It was almost undetectable. The situation is not good. Sang-Soo turned around and said. Jinjin fell silent. Baiya, this young man had once made great contributions to the exploration team. He was young, pure, and full of yearning to be a knight. Now, he had fallen here with his eyes closed. The Grim Reaper's scythe was embedded in his neck. After going through so much, he still fell here. During this period of time, there were many new injured people in the valley camp. There was no lack of deaths. If it was before, the morale would drop again and again. However, now that Jinjin was here, he had supreme prestige. Relying on his existence, the team still maintained good morale. Jinjin was not surprised by Baiya's condition. Jinjin felt more pity. If he was given a background and a bloodline, with his fighting spirit and perseverance, it might be different. Baiya was really too ordinary. He was just an ordinary person. He was young, full of vitality, drive, naivety, and stupidity. However, this kind of stupidity sometimes seemed so precious. Baiya was happy to help others. This came from his nature. When the exploration team was poisoned, it was he who took care of the others. This earned him a good relationship with others. When they broke out of the acid green lizard's encirclement, he was stupid enough to save Sang-Soo. Instead, he got himself into trouble. If Jinjin had not come back to save him, he would have died on the spot. When they were in the oasis, he saved Lan Zhao again. He was not afraid of being poisoned. His worship of needlework was almost blind. He was one of the most fanatical followers of needlework among all the people. I'm sorry I'm late. Zidi's voice came from behind. Zidi quickly diagnosed him. Jinjin's heart was suddenly filled with hope. But Zidi only responded with silence after checking. The light of hope in Jinjin's eyes quickly faded. Sigh. Sang-Soo sighed deeply. My lord, take a look at this. He had just found a stack of letters under Sang-Soo's straw bed. These should be written by him. Sang-Soo quickly browsed through it and frowned slightly. He was usually calm and rational, but at this moment, he revealed a rare look of anger. According to his judgment, Miss Xia had toyed with Baiya. She had used a fake love to deceive an inexperienced young man. She had made him take risks and sent him to his death just for fun. Jinjin shook his head. Sang-Soo, before the truth is revealed, nothing can be confirmed. The young knight did not want to see Sang-Soo's guess be correct. Jinjin took the stack of letters from Sang-Soo and quickly skimmed through them. The handwriting in the letters was terrible. It was messy and did not have any sense of beauty, but it was obviously Baiya's handwriting. It was obvious that he had not learned how to write for long. There were many places in the letters that were intentionally left blank. Baiya probably did not know how to write these words. The words in the letters had also changed color. They had turned purple, as if the ink had deteriorated. In the letters, Baiya expressed his love for Miss Xia and his admiration for Jinjin. And in the last letter, he wrote about regret. Seeing Baiya's regret, Jinjin could not help but feel his heart tremble. If he had not fallen into a life and death crisis, he would not have such a deep resonance. Jinjin's face was solemn. He stared at the unconscious Baiya and said solemnly, I promise you, Baiya, if you are unfortunate enough to perish, I will personally deliver these letters to your beloved. If Miss Xia truly loves you, I will tell her everything. I will tell her that she did not misjudge you. You have the spirit of a knight. You fought bravely, did your best, and always followed the path of kindness and justice. You have never retreated. But if she is only playing with you, then I will uphold justice for you. She will be judged by a holy knight. After Jinjin finished speaking, he solemnly put away the stack of letters. Baiya's fate seemed to be sealed. Everyone left the cave. Sir, please wait. Zidi suddenly spoke. At the same time, she glanced at Sang-Soo. Sang-Soo bowed to Jinjin and quickly left. Only ZD and Jinjin were left in the passage. There was a moment of silence. Sir, give these letters to me for safekeeping. After all, you are often at the forefront of the charge. ZD said, please take good care of them. Jinjin nodded and handed the letters to ZD. Sir, ZD said again. Jinjin smiled. You don't have to comfort me. Indeed, I'm in a very low mood. My companion has fallen, but I do not have the ability to save him. There are too many times when my ability is limited. Sir, after all, we are humans, not gods. Even gods have areas they are good at and not good at. ZD held Jinjin's hands. Sir, please do not blame yourself too much. How can I not blame myself? Jinjin smiled bitterly. I neglected him too much. He is a meritorious subject. But later, when there were more people around him, his ability was overshadowed by others. I ignored him. Now think about it. Did I use him as a tool? When this tool is useless, or when its usefulness is reduced, did I forget about him? Am I a qualified leader? I often give public speeches and say that I treat everyone equally. Did I really treat everyone equally? Did I really do it? If I paid more attention to Baya and discovered his bad situation in advance, would the result be different now? Sir, ZD called out softly. She took a step forward and threw herself into Jinjin's arms. She wrapped her arms around Jinjin's waist and hugged the young knight tightly. Lord Jinjin, you are definitely a qualified, no, an excellent leader. You are a knight, my knight. Please do not doubt yourself. The soft and tender body and the affirmative encouragement made Jinjin's depressed look a little relieved. The young man raised his hand and touched ZD's shoulder. At this moment, the young man felt a warm current coming from ZD's body. This warm current continued to flow into his heart, and the ice in his heart seemed to be melting. The invisible barrier seemed to be disappearing. Jinjin had the urge to tell his secret to ZD again, but the next moment, his expression changed slightly. The ultrasound detected an emergency at the front line. The messenger had already run to the shipyard in the empty space in the small valley. We have to go. I still have to look after the big guy. Jinjin gently pushed ZD away. Okay. ZD let go of her arms. Her purple crystal eyes stared deeply at Jinjin. She watched him turn and leave. His figure disappeared around the corner. When a messenger arrived at the empty space in the valley, he successfully found Jinjin. Jinjin moved out. Not long after, he defeated the magical beast army again and stabilized the defense line. That night, he moved alone again to cause trouble for the magical beast army. However, the casualties he caused were becoming more and more limited. The defense around the blue dog foxwolf was very strong. Every blue dog foxwolf that died was a lesson in blood. It gave the blue dog foxwolf that survived a lot of experience. Although Jinjin could also produce a strange fragrance, this phenomenon could not interfere with the magical beast army. Jinjin did his best and killed many magical beasts. He dragged his exhausted body back to the camp to rest. The soldiers on night watch looked at him with admiration and respect. Jinjin had very little time to rest. Among all the higher-ups, he was the one who worked the hardest. However, this kind of gaze, which was full of love and fanatical praise, could not give Jinjin pure warmth and motivation. It was like a cold light without any temperature. It made him feel dazzled. As usual, the magical beast army attacked again the next day. The people defended the perilous area. Under the command of Zonga, they did their best to kill the magical beast army. If they did not do this, the situation would quickly collapse with the magical beast army's repeated reinforcements. However, although the people fought with all their strength and the magical beast army suffered heavy casualties, as time passed, their forces increased. Only then did the people realize that there were so many blue dog foxwolf on this island. However, thinking about it carefully, the island was too big. The jungle was vast, and the forest was deep. It was normal for it to bear the life and reproduction of so many blue dog foxwolf. The situation was in a stalemate for the time being. The intensity of the earthquakes decreased, but the frequency was increasing. Sometimes there would be 3 or 4 earthquakes a day. The big guy was also getting sick. Roar! The big guy roared angrily. Run, he's getting sick again. The people fled in panic. Zhen Jin's body was like lightning. He jumped up and hit the back of the big guy's neck. Bang! As soon as the big guy finished roaring, his eyes rolled back and he fell to the ground. Roar! Run! Zhen Jin had already made his move. Bang! As soon as the big guy finished roaring, he fell to the ground. Roar! Hurry! Bang! The big guy fell to the ground. Roar! Bang! The big guy opened his mouth and wanted to roar. Zhen Jin made his move. Bang! As the number of times the big guy was knocked out increased, Zhen Jin became more and more proficient. And practice makes perfect. He replaced it with throwing stones. The stones hit the back of the big guy's neck every time. The force was neither light nor heavy, just enough to knock him out. As a result, every time the big guy saw Zhen Jin, he felt a faint pain in his neck. Zhen Jin suppressed him every time. At first, the big guy was full of fear of Zhen Jin because of this. Later, this fear turned into numbness, and then numbness turned into calmness. The big guy had an attitude of, go ahead and hit me, do whatever you want. I can't resist, I keep fainting. But in the end, his calmness actually gave birth to a sense of intimacy. As if he remembered the shipwright's words of hitting you is loving you. But it's true, Zhen Jin didn't hurt him. Every time Zhen Jin stopped the big guy from acting up, he didn't harm the new ship or other people's lives. This created a more forgiving environment for the big guy. As the big guy fell to the ground again and again, the new ship became more and more complete. The ship's planks were connected. The rudder at the stern was completed. It was even reinforced with iron bars. The deck was also more than half completed. The new ship had 2 decks. After the second deck was completed, it would be the ship's bow and stern. Currently, people were rushing to make the necessary cabins. To build the ship, everyone was doing their best. And during this time, the front line was constantly being pushed back. At first, the defensive line was repaired, but as the situation developed, people could only abandon it. The defensive line retreated from the foot of the mountain to the slope. At first, in order to protect the empty space in the valley, people suffered heavy losses. Mu Ban came up with an outrageous plan. After getting the shipwright's approval, people moved the new ship up to the slope. This way, the defensive area was reduced, the soldiers were reduced, and the defensive line was stabilized. The reason for the defensive line's retreat was, on one hand, Zhen Jin's side kept losing people, while the blue dog fox wolf kept receiving reinforcements. The scales of victory were slowly tilting towards the magical beast army. On the other hand, the blue dog fox wolf gathered the underground sandworms and used them. Zhen Jin and Zhong Gu couldn't quickly kill these underground sandworms. They could only watch as they endured countless attacks and forcefully destroyed the defensive line. Zhen Jin carried out his responsibility as a leader. Even though the front line was constantly being pushed back, he kept boosting morale and taking the lead. And the new ship was constantly being perfected, giving people hope. Everyone persevered, gritting their teeth and persevering. Like iron in a large kiln, constantly being burned and forged, people gradually became a real group. They became close and tacit with each other. The estrangement, disgust, suspicion, etc. disappeared, replaced by the camaraderie and trust. From beginning to end, there were no deserters. There would be no deserters because they had nowhere to run. Finally, after paying the price of 100 casualties, the new ship was completed. It was a sunny day. At noon, there was an earthquake, so the magical beast army didn't launch an attack. After the earthquake, the magical beast army would be quiet for a while. On the slope, a simple ceremony was being carried out. Sir, please do this hammer. The shipwright solemnly handed a hammer to Zhen Jin. No, your contribution is the greatest. You do the last hammer. Zhen Jin shook his head. The shipwright still wanted to speculate, but Zhen Jin insisted, go, this is an order. The shipwright could only obey. Under everyone's gaze, he swung the hammer and hammered the nails that were specially left on the ship. Everyone cheered. The shipwright's eyes were red, filled with tears. He returned to Jinjin's side. His voice was a bit choked. Sir, my lifelong wish was to create a ship. I didn't think, not on the dock, but on this island, I would be able to fulfill my wish. Of course, this ship has a lot of flaws. For example, the mast, we only have a low mast. After piecing it together, we can reach a suitable height. For example, the sails, our sails are too small. We can't borrow too much wind. Also, the bottom of the ship, both sides of the ship need to be reinforced with iron bars. The current structure strength is worrying. Oh, and the anchor, we still lack a suitable anchor. All right. Jean Jean smiled, patted the shipwright's shoulder, and interrupted him. These things, we can make up for them during the voyage. Now is the time to celebrate. Go, eat, and drink to your heart's content. Today, you are the brightest star. A lot of people are waiting for you. They all want to toast you. Jinjin pushed the shipwright to the crowd. Because of Jean Jin's respect, the shipwright was almost moved to tears on the spot. The shipwright joined the crowd. The cheers instantly became louder. In the past few months, this was the only banquet. The new ship was completed, although it could only be considered as the foundation, barely reaching the standard for sea voyaging. But the significance was extraordinary. From now on, Jean Jean and the others could attack or retreat. Of course, the new ship still needed a sliding track to enter the sea. The original sliding track had been destroyed by the magical beast army, but on the other side, there was another sliding track hidden in the shallow underground. This was Zhong Ji's suggestion. Everyone had to thank him for his foresight as a general. And other than the sliding track, when the new ship entered the sea, it also needed to attract the attention of the magical beast army, attracting their forces to the other side. There would definitely be a huge battle. Let's not think about this. Today, all I need is rest. Jinjin also wanted to take a breather. These days, as the leader, he was under the most pressure. The shipwright was surrounded by the crowd. This was the most glorious moment of his life. Jinjin was of course not left out. Shi Suo was half kneeling on the ground, one hand on his chest, the other holding a seashell wine cup. He was very emotional. Sir, it is because of your leadership that we can persevere. You are the role model of the holy knights, the light of our light. Sir, please allow the lowly me to offer you this insignificant barbecue. Lord Jinjin, all the praises are not enough to describe you. With you leading us, it is our life's greatest happiness. As if he was infected by the celebratory atmosphere, in the cave where the wounded were gathered for treatment, Bai Ye's eyelids slowly opened. But the compliments, the celebratory atmosphere of the banquet, could not affect Jinjin. He sat on the main seat, looking at the laughing people. Although he was also happy, although he was smiling, he felt a deep estrangement. He was here, but also outside. He was like a person from two different worlds. Ever since the last time, he was unable to confess his secret to ZD. He was unable to say it. The banquet continued, taking advantage of everyone's celebration. Jean Jean silently left the crowd. He came to a distant hillside and saw a straw hut. In this straw hut that could not shelter him from the wind and rain, the big guy was curled up, lying on the straw bed. Here, Jean Jean gave the barbecue to the big guy. The big guy silently took it. Jean Jean walked a few steps and sat down on a huge rock. He looked up at the sky. Above his head was a pitch-black volcanic cloud, deep and dense. It seemed to be because of them there was no rain in the recent days. Since the ship was newly built, there was one less obstacle. Jean Jean looked into the distance. The hillside was higher than the forest. He could see the sea. The sky above the sea was not covered by the volcanic cloud. Where the sea and the sky met, the sun was setting. The sea was calm. Under the light of dusk, it sparkled like fish scales. And on the hillside, a new ship had just been built. When it was cleared of obstacles, it could follow the rails on the hillside and dive down. It rushed faster and faster, cutting through all the obstacles, until it rushed into the sea, splashing up monstrous waves. This beautiful scene was not only in Jean Jin's imagination, but also in the dreams of others. It was the greatest motivation that supported them until now. The sound of the big guy eating barbecue came to his ears. It was very rough, but brought peace to Jinjin. Compared to the banquet, he found that he liked this place more. There was a faint joy in his heart. Jinjin himself was also very strange. At this moment, he did not look for ZD, but came to the big guy's side. Under the reflection of the setting sun, the lonely shadow of the young knight was elongated, extending to the straw hut. The big guy in the straw hut finished eating the barbecue, looked at Jinjin with his back to him, and slowly climbed out. He squatted in the distance, imitating Jin's movements, and also looked at the setting sun. Jinjin noticed the big guy's movements, glanced at him, and smiled at him. Then the young knight looked at the setting sun again. The scenery in front of him was magnificent, but his eyebrows were always slightly wrinkled. There was a worry that was difficult to dispel. The big guy looked at the setting sun, and soon he was bored. He glanced at Jinjin, tried to move his but closer to the young knight. Jinjin did not respond. The big guy looked at the setting sun silently for a while, then moved again closer to Jinjin. Jinjin still did not respond. The big guy moved again and again. At first, the interval between his movements was very long, but later he moved more and more frequently. Jinjin turned to look at him. The big guy's, but was off the ground, his hands on the ground, in the process of moving. Being looked at by Jinjin, he suddenly froze like a stone statue. A gust of sea breeze blew, causing his hair to sway slightly. Jinjin was amused, laughed, and patted the rock he was sitting on. The big guy suddenly grinned foolishly, revealing a mouth full of yellow teeth. He finally finished the second half of his movement, this time sitting directly next to Jinjin, close to the rock. Not afraid of me anymore? The big guy shook his head and said sullenly, "The big guy will accompany you. I knock you out so many times, don't you hate me?" The big guy shook his head again. You and the big guy are the same. Jinjin's head shook, and he was stunned on the spot. Under the setting sun, the shadows of the two were drawn diagonally, close to each other. At first glance, there was no difference. P.S. The chapters I've been writing recently are in a very good state. I often can't stop, and the more I write, the more I write. I have to write out what's in my heart before I'm willing to stop. Only then will I feel good. This is a pure, creative impulse. So much so that there is a delay in updating. But every chapter is basically a big chapter. I hope everyone can understand. I'm going to eat first. Chapter 150. Nonsense. While Jinjin was still in a daze, the shipwright's voice came from behind him. The young knight and the burly man both turned around, seeing the shipwright holding a small barrel of wine in one hand and a large piece of barbecued meat in the other. Obviously, the shipwright was worried about the burly man, so he came out from the banquet and heard the burly man's words. "Lord Jinjin, please forgive him. This blockhead definitely didn't mean to offend you." The shipwright knelt on the ground with a worried expression. The burly man was confused. Jinjin laughed. "Stand up. Do you think I don't know your son? I've knocked him out many times. In a way, what he said wasn't wrong. We've all been reduced to this. We're all on the same boat." The old shipwright was very grateful. "Sir, your nobility isn't just because of your identity, your bloodline, your spirit, your character. It was you who saved us. The time we spent with you will definitely be remembered for the rest of our lives. Your bravery, tolerance, wisdom, and other virtues will definitely be praised in the future." Jinjin nodded. His feelings towards these words were different from before. He said to the shipwright, "Don't overestimate me, shipwright, and don't underestimate yourself. In fact, you're very important. Without you, how could we have made a new boat? Your son also contributed a lot. Without his efforts, we would still be a long way from completing it." Hearing this, the burly man smiled happily. His efforts were recognized. The shipwright's arrival made Jinjin want to leave. The young knight jumped down from the rock. "Sir, please let me send you off." The shipwright put the things in his hands in the straw hut, insisting on delivering them. Jinjin could see that the shipwright was still worried. "Don't worry, I won't argue with the burly man." After receiving Jinjin's reassurance, the shipwright was relieved. Nobles and knights valued their reputation very much. Most of them would think of the burly man's words as an insult to themselves. "Sir, you really are different from the other big shots." The shipwright was filled with emotion, revealing his true feelings. "Please forgive me for being presumptuous, but I've never seen the big guy get close to anyone other than me. You probably don't know how shocked I was when I saw the big guy sitting next to you. Before meeting you, no one had ever looked at him as an equal. No one had ever truly looked at people like us." Jean said with a wry smile, "I am indeed different." He patted the shipwright's shoulder. "Although you've never said it, I can imagine the big guy's life experience. He was an abandoned baby on the ship and was adopted by you. He was born with the bloodline of a giant and suffered from strange gazes. His strength is getting stronger and stronger, and his body is getting bigger and bigger. Almost everyone discriminates against him, hates him, is wary of him, insults him, and curses him. His hearing is very sharp. He can hear what people think is a whisper. He can hear the curses, mockery, and hatred of the people around him. Only you are good to him and give him the love of a father. That's why he is always close to you. From what I saw with my own eyes, I fought for you. Even if I didn't have any martial skills, I would be willing to give up my life to protect you. And you must have given up a lot for him. Look at the way he curled up in the straw hut. Look at how he took the initiative to avoid others and cower. I know that in order to let him survive, you must have taught him how to survive as a monster in the human world. You must be very worried that one day he would be treated as a monster by many people and destroyed in the name of justice. You must also be very pained to see him being bullied by others and not being able to fight back, because you taught him not to fight back. Otherwise, the consequences would be even worse. That's why he doesn't know martial skills. He is used to enduring. Is he ugly? No, he just looks different from most people. His heart is much kinder than most people. Is he strong? No, who said that having great strength and a strong physique is strong? What kind of strong person would only cry out in pain to protect their weapon? He is actually very weak. Weak. Protecting and supporting such people, isn't that the spirit of a knight? My lord. The shipwright's eyes were red. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he choked on his words. The praise and affirmation he heard at the banquet before, even if it was 100 times, 10,000 times more, it still couldn't compare to Jean words. Because Jean really understands him. The word understand might seem simple, but it is actually very difficult and heavy. You are a good father. Jean left these words and left, leaving the old shipwright behind, staring at Jin's back. The setting sun sank into the sea, no longer leaving any afterglow. In the old shipwright's blurred vision, due to his tears, Jin's figure seemed a little strange, but seemed to be shining. The new ship was basically completed. It has the ability to sail. This matter caused the survivors' morale to soar. In the next few days, Jean and the others began to prepare for the new ship to sail. If there was no blue dog fox wolf, sailing the new ship would be a simple matter. But now that the magical beast army had surrounded the small valley, the difficulty of this matter skyrocketed by more than 100 times. Some people were glad that they listened to Zhong Ji's suggestion and built a backup track. But whether this track could be used or not was still a problem. After all, there were countless earthquakes on the island, and the backup track was buried in the shallow layer of the ground to prevent it from being damaged by the wind and rain. Even if the track wasn't damaged, in order to use the track, they had to remove the wooden planks and other covering materials. And according to Mu Ban's estimation, it was very likely that the track would be intermittently damaged on a small scale. This meant that it had to be built in advance to be able to use the track. And Blue Dog Fox Wolf's intelligence made the matter of repairing the track even more complicated. Once the Blue Dog Fox Wolf became aware of their intentions, then the new ship's plan to sail would be more hindered or even ultimately fail. After Jean and the others discussed, they decided to attract the attention of the Blue Dog Fox Wolf, dig a tunnel, secretly send a repair team to check the track, and seize every opportunity to repair it. In order to increase the possibility of escape as much as possible, Jean no longer trained at night. On the one hand, He continued to harass the magical beast army, weakening their combat power as much as possible. On the other hand, he personally investigated the state of the underground surface track. The results of the investigation were not optimistic. The track was damaged in many places, and some of them were almost broken into pieces. The amount of repair work was large, but the difficulty was not high. The structure of the track was very simple. While Jinjin was busy, he received a piece of good news. He came to the cave where the injured and sick were gathered and saw Baya. Baya, who had been in a coma for many days, had now woken up. Lord Jinjin. His breath was still very weak, his face was pale, his cheekbones were protruding, and he had lost a lot of weight these days. You made it through again. Take care of your injuries. Let me tell you a piece of good news. The new ship has been built, and it has reached the standard to go to sea, Jinjin said with a smile. He had lost all his memories, but he had a deep and good impression of Baya. After returning from the volcanic cave, he only had Song Su, ZD, and Baya by his side. Baya nodded, and a look of shame appeared on his face. I have been in a coma for so many days. I'm a burden to everyone. Jinjin shook his head. This is not a burden. We are companions on the same ship. Helping each other and leaving this place together is our common goal. This is your letter. ZD, who was on the side, returned the previous letter to Baya. It seems that we don't need to send it. All right. There is also a new bottle of ink. The bottle of ink you used before has gone bad. This new bottle of ink was made by me. It will not fade. ZD also gave Baya a small gift. Baya was flattered, and he was so moved that his voice choked. It is so good to meet all of you. When I was in a coma, I seemed to have become a lonely soul, floating in the boundless darkness. I didn't know where to go and where to come from. In a trance, I heard Misty calling me. It must be love. It was love that guided me. Baya began to talk about his experience of being in a coma. Ever since he came out of the oasis, he had a tendency to talk a lot. This near-death experience seemed to have increased the extent of his chatter. Jinjin smiled. He knew how Baya felt and understood very well, because he had been on the verge of death many times. It was really good to be able to talk so much. This was the feeling of being alive. Baya's awakening was like a ray of sunlight that bathed Jinjin's heart. For the next few days, Jinjin's heart was bright. Every night, after praying to the Shengming Emperor, Jinjin would tell himself, "It will be better. Everything will be better. I can take Baya, ZD, Song Su, and the others and leave this island alive. When we reach White Sand City, I will forget about the heart core, forget about the various changes. Or I will ask a priest or doctor to remove the hidden dangers in my body." The maintenance of the slide was finally completed. The higher-ups were happy, and they were glad that the maintenance was much easier than they had expected. They didn't know that the main reason was that every time the maintenance team was on the move, Jinjin would personally go and harass the magical beast army alone. In order to attract the attention of the blue dog Fox Wolf, Jinjin risked his life several times, charging into the enemy's ranks, and finally retreating with serious injuries. These days, the shipwright, Mu Ban, and the others weren't idle. Before, the new ship's foundation was completed, and there was a lot of follow-up work. Now, the new ship had wooden slats on both sides of the ship's hull to strengthen the structure. The ship's board, deck, and other gaps were filled with broken hemp rope, and then they were glued together with ZD's medicine. The shipwright also taught some people a small craft, how to process wooden qualified pulleys. Sail rigging required a lot of pulleys. The high-grade pulley was made of metal. It was really a wheel, but the new ship only used wooden modules, shaved into the shape of wheels, and then smeared with oil to make the surface lubricated. The most conspicuous was the bow. At the front of the bow, there was a ram, made up of several tree trunks, like a knight's spear. The curved surface of the bow was reinforced with many wooden planks, like a shield. With a spear and a shield, plus the speed of rushing down the mountain, even if the crocodile-headed hammer-tailed centipede was in front, it could still be knocked away. The day of the new ship was really close. However, on the night of this very day, Yi Zichen suddenly stopped. Rumble, the sound of the volcano erupting seemed to be transmitted over. Everyone was awakened, standing on the hillside. They saw the volcano erupting, forming an unprecedented magma pillar, shooting straight into the sky. Then, the earth shook violently, and rocks rolled down, smashing into the erected boards around the new ship. It was an unprecedented earthquake. Under the horrified gazes of the people, the small valley that they had always treated as their home finally couldn't hold on. A huge crack appeared on the surface of the mountain. The crack spread across the valley, and then the valley suddenly collapsed. Quick run! The people panicked and began to cover their heads and run. Zhonggu wanted to stabilize the situation, but he didn't succeed. Protect the ship. It seemed to be the shipwright's shout, but no one listened. When the earthquake happened, Zhenjin was fighting with the magical beast army. When he rushed back to the camp, the small valley was no longer the same as before. There were broken rocks, broken wood, and corpses everywhere. No! Zhenjin's face was pale, and he hurriedly ran deeper into the ruins. There were still aftershocks, and perhaps there would be an even bigger earthquake in the next moment. But the people in the ruins had already begun to save themselves. The ship. We have to dig the ship out. Someone come help me move the rocks. It's over, we're finished. The ship is definitely destroyed. We have no hope. There's a lot of noise. Some people's faces were ashen, desperately digging and moving rocks, while others were wailing and breaking down emotionally. The new ship that had always carried their hopes had a very small chance of surviving. I told you, the small valley is very dangerous. If there was a big collapse, it would be terrible. You just didn't listen to me. Someone shouted, complaining and blaming others. More people were silent. There were also people who angrily scolded, "Bullshit! Without the valley, can you stop the magical beast army?" Zhenjin didn't stop the people from venting. They needed to vent. Only then could they calm down. In fact, Zhenjin also needed to vent. Looking at the ruins, he was angry, shocked, panicked, and disappointed. But as the leader, he could only suppress these negative emotions in the bottom of his heart. Just as he took over the command, the rocks suddenly shook, and a large hand appeared. "Help, help me!" Then, the large man's voice came from below. Son. Not being able to find the large man, the shipwright, who was already panicking, quickly rushed over, frantically moving the rocks. Hold on. The old shipwright kept calling out. Zhenjin, Zhonggu, and the others all moved, combining everyone's strength, quickly moving the rocks away. The large man was revealed. His legs were crushed by a huge rock. His injuries were very serious. It was definitely a comminuted fracture. But the large man still used both his hands and his chest to block the huge rock. Seeing the shipwright again, the large man was very happy and asked for praise. "Father, look, I protected the ship." The old shipwright's eyes were red, looking at the large man in shock. Seeing that the large man was still alive, he was naturally overjoyed. But when he saw the large man's injuries, he immediately fell into a strong sense of regret and self-blame. "Father was wrong. Father was wrong," the old shipwright cried. When a mountain was collapsing, in a moment of desperation, he shouted to protect the ship. Other than the large man, no one else listened to the shipwright, including himself. "Father, don't cry. The ship is still here. The ship is still here." The large man quickly comforted the shipwright. He knew how important this ship was to the shipwright. "Unbelievable. The ship's hull is only slightly damaged." Mu Ban checked and loudly reported. "It's all thanks to the large man. If the rock really hit the ship would definitely be destroyed. Large man, good job. It's all thanks to you." After understanding the situation, everyone thanked him. The large man was a bit stunned. This was the first time he faced such a situation. Only the old shipwright rushed to the large man's side, looking at the rock and the large man's severely deformed legs. "Does it hurt?" The large man nodded, then shook his head. "Father, don't cry. I don't feel pain. Hurry up and move the boulder away." Mangu roared. "We can't move it. It will cause further damage to the large man's legs. We need to first break this rock or corrode it." Zhenjin shook his head. Just as he was about to give the order, he suddenly heard the howling of wolves. A wolf. The howling of wolves came one after another. Everyone heard it clearly, and their faces all changed. The magical beast army is attacking. Chapter 151. Didn't the magical beast army stop attacking after the earthquake? What we do now? Our defense line has collapsed. The crowd was in a state of chaos. Jinjin frowned deeply. The situation had suddenly reached the most critical moment. Let's retreat. We can't win. Someone suggested. It was a former member of the San Dao mercenary group. All along, the survivors have been fighting against the magical beast army by occupying the high ground, relying on the city's defense, and then using long-range firepower such as bows and crossbows to exhaust and suppress them. This was the most correct tactic, because this island banned magic and the use of low-level combat energy. But now, after the earthquake, the valley had collapsed. There was a shortage of crossbows, and the city's defense was gone. Most of them were ordinary people. In actual combat, they could barely deal with ordinary beasts, not to mention a large number of magical beasts. We can't retreat. The ship is still here. We can build it again. How much time do we have to build it? I think this damn island is about to be finished. People began to quarrel. Their opinions were not unified. Indeed, recently, the weather on the island was obviously abnormal. Volcanic clouds covered the sky, and earthquakes occurred constantly. Perhaps this island would eventually be split into countless pieces by the earthquake or completely covered by the volcanic magma. The shipwright cried out mournfully, "We can't retreat. My son can't run away." The big guy was still pressed under the boulder. People became more and more panicked. "Calm down," Jinjin shouted. Instantly, everyone's eyes were focused on Jinjin. Fate. The young leader sighed and couldn't help but smile bitterly. The situation was clearly good before, but in the blink of an eye, he was once again in a desperate situation and faced with difficult choices. However, ever since he woke up and struggled to survive on this island, how many difficult choices had he faced? This time, compared to all the choices before, Jinjin was more decisive. His gaze was firm as he looked around. Retreat? Where can we retreat to? Some of us can retreat because our bodies are far stronger than ordinary people. But what about the majority of you? Can you escape the pursuit of the bat monkey, the crocodile hammertail centipede, and the crafty blue dog fox wolf? Everyone fell silent. Everyone, this is the most crucial moment. We don't have a camp to defend the city, and we don't have enough weapons. The earthquake just now caused our men to suffer heavy losses, but this time we can only fight to the death. We have to fight while clearing the obstacles so that the new ship can enter the slippery track. We have to get the new ship into the sea and break through all obstacles. When we win, when we celebrate on the surface of the sea, when we look back and see these damned magical beasts drown in lava and sink with this damned island, we will be grateful for our efforts. We will be glad that we didn't give up when we were at our most desperate. Believe me, we will be the final victors. Jinjin shouted and pulled out his thin sword, Silver Lightning. He placed the thin sword in front of him and began to pray loudly. "Shengming Emperor, my lord, please show some mercy. Please cast your gaze here. Your knights will fight to the death and continue to practice your way. We will let the flag of the empire fly. We will save the world. We will help the good and the weak, even if we have to pay with our lives." As soon as he finished speaking, his body expanded rapidly as if it was inflated. He directly tore his clothes, and dark golden armor grew out, covering Jin's limbs and torso, covering his head, and even the soles of his feet. Jinjin raised his hand and threw the thin sword Silver Lightning back to Heiwan. In a place where no one could see, a small spider tentacle appeared in the palm of his right hand, and it was also covered by the scorpion shell. Then Jinjin clenched his hand into a fist, and a spider blade grew out from the end of the spider tentacle and protruded from the center of his fist. The sharp surface of the blade was still surrounded by electric light. This was the latest result of Jin's hard training. He combined the electric shock of the flying squirrel and the spider blade, and only generated electricity locally in the blade. It couldn't greatly reduce the consumption of magic energy, and it also allowed the strength of his attacks to undergo a qualitative change. Everyone exclaimed. This was the first time Jinjin completed a mutation in the middle of a crowd. A divine night. This is a miracle. The great god is watching us. We will definitely win. The morale stabilized, and the fire of hope reignited in everyone's eyes. Jinjin, however, was heavy. This was a last resort. Normally, he wouldn't have mutated in front of everyone, but the situation was very critical, and he couldn't care less. He had to appease the people as soon as possible, so he could only take the risk. In the next battle, even if we can win, it will be a Pyrrhic victory, and we will definitely suffer heavy casualties. Jinjin had a clear judgment. If he was alone, it would be fine. The magical beast army couldn't do anything to him, but he had to protect many people, including ZD, Sangsu, and so on. He had to try his best to let as many people survive as possible. Because he was a holy knight, and because such a large ship needed people to control, it would be difficult for a dozen people to drive it. Even if they could start in the future on the sea, in the face of a storm, or even slightly larger waves, it would be difficult for them to fight back. The magical beast army did not waste their breath, nor did they adjust their formation. Under the command of the blue dogs, foxes, and wolves, the magical beast army charged forward. Everyone occupied the collapsed ruins of the valley, desperately resisting. Jinjin and Zonggu stood proudly at the front. Zonggu also put on his helmet, fully armed. Under the helmet, both of them looked very serious. The magical beast army rushed over too quickly, and they didn't even have time to count the number of people on their side. Most of the people fled in a hurry to avoid the earthquake, and now they were even unarmed. Fire! Quickly set up a fire for me. ZD shouted. The girl opened the leather bag, and there were neatly arranged backup potions inside. Quick, quick! Mu Ban ordered a group of wounded people to clear the path. Son, hold on. Dad'll take you away in a while. After the shipwright comforted the big man, he immediately hurried to join Mu Ban and the others. Rumble. The group of beasts rushed over like a huge wave. Many people swallowed their saliva. In the past, they had been shooting from a high vantage point. Now that they were facing the group of beasts on almost flat ground, they immediately felt the terrifying power of the magical beast army. But the beast's charge suddenly slowed down. The valley collapsed, and there were many rocks hindering their charge. Zonggu and Jinjin's eyes flashed at the same time, and they both saw an opportunity. You take charge of the front line. I'll charge for a while first. Jinjin shouted. Zonggu nodded. He knew that Jinjin was stronger and more suitable for this task. Jinjin rushed out alone and directly rushed into the group of magical beasts, killing in all directions. He roared repeatedly, and the flying squirrels couldn't get close to him at all. The claws, fangs, and blades of the bat monkeys and blade spiders couldn't do anything to the scorpion shells. The web of the blade spiders was directly cut by Jinjin's blade. Only the red monkey-tail brown bear's claws made Jinjin wary, but it wasn't much of a problem. The young knight used ultrasonic waves, and with his talent in chaotic battles, he could always find the most suitable attack route for himself in the chaos. The magical beast army was turned upside down by him. The flashing blades were sharp and unparalleled, almost killing one magical beast with a single slash. Even the silver magical beasts were no exception. Jinjin's figure fighting bravely boosted the morale of the people behind him, and their blood boiled. Woof, woof, woof. The blue dog Fox Wolf barked. The magical beast army quickly changed, leaving a group to trap Jinjin, and the other two groups to the left and right of the group rushed towards the crowd. These cunning beasts. Zonggu cursed and led the group to fight on the spot. The bows and arrows were sparse, and they couldn't hit the fierce beasts at all. When the distance was close, the group hurled stones. The normal beasts were blocked, but the monkey-tail brown bear and the other beasts were like scratches even if they were hit. The magical beasts were close, and the survivors were no match for them at all. Screams were heard, and in an instant, the people suffered heavy casualties. Zhonggu, Sandao, Heiwan, Lanzhao, and the others became a mainstay, but they only lasted for a short while before they were forced to retreat by the increasing pressure. Sandworms attacked from the ground, bat monkeys swooped down from the sky, and white rhinoceroses, monkey-tailed brown bears, and crocodile-headed hammertail centipedes came from all directions. The group couldn't resist at all. Retreat, retreat. Zhonggu roared in desperation. His voice was hoarse and distorted. He had the talent of a general, and he knew that if he rashly retreated, it would easily lead to a collapse. But there was no other way. If they continued to stay, they would definitely die, so they could only take the risk. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, Zhang Jin saw that the situation was not good and came back to kill. He and Zhonggu fought side by side, personally bringing up the rear, and killed fiercely, causing fear in the magical beasts, which allowed the group to successfully retreat to the vicinity of the new ship. Seeing the front troops retreat to their side so quickly, Muban, the shipwright, and the others showed a look of panic. They tried their best, but they couldn't clear half of the obstacles. There was no time at all. Blue Dog Fox Wolf was cunning and vicious, with only one tactic. The survivors were forced into a corner. The main thing was that the situation was too passive. In this round of confrontation, the front troops had already lost more than half of their forces. Woof, woof, woof. The deadly barks once again resounded through the battlefield. Blue Dog Fox Wolf didn't want to give Jinjin and the others any time to breathe. The magical beast army rushed over again. Everyone was in despair, even if Jinjin was by their side. We can only completely mutate. Zhang Jin threw all his worries to the back of his mind and made up his mind. Zhonggu, you defend here. I will rush over. As long as I kill Blue Dog Fox Wolf, the threat of the magical beast army will be greatly reduced. Zhang Jin shouted. This was the only chance. Purely defending, even if it was completely mutated, was not enough. Zhang Jin was only one person after all. Right now, he could only use offense as defense. If you want to kill my people, then I will directly kill you. The disadvantage was too great. Zhang Jin could only use this desperate tactic. Master! ZD's voice came from behind. Be careful. The bonfire was lit. ZD sprinkled the powder. The smoke forced the flying squirrels, poisonous bees, and bat monkeys to retreat, greatly reducing the pressure on the defense. But it was difficult to maintain. The small leather bag only had so much capacity. The backup potions were only a small part of it. You take care of yourself, too. Jinjin only had time to say this to his fiancée, and then turned around to fearlessly charge. Chapter 152. Charge, charge, charge. Jinjin charged directly to the rear of the magical beast army. His desperate and resolute manner frightened the surrounding magical beasts. Woof, woof, woof. Under the command of the Blue Dog Fox Wolf, a large number of magical beasts began to surround and block Jinjin. Jinjin rolled on the ground and dodged the bite of a crocodile-headed hammer-tailed lion. He ran quickly and brushed past a brown monkey. With a swing of his sword, he split the bat monkey that pounced at him in half. He suddenly jumped and stepped on the back of the strong white rhinoceros. Then he landed, rolled, and continued to charge. The flying squirrels attacked. He roared loudly, and the flying squirrels rolled to the ground, howling in pain. The underground sandworms burrowed out of the ground to attack, but Jinjin's ultrasonic wave had already detected them. He dodged in advance, and the underground sandworms returned without success. Looking down from above, the magical beast army was like a huge wave, and Jinjin was going against the flow alone. The Blue Dog Fox Wolf did not panic at all. Zhonggu and the others did not know Jinjin's identity, but they had already guessed it. After all, Jinjin harassed the magical beast army almost every night. The scorpion shell on his body and his fighting style were very obvious. When Jinjin was halfway, the Blue Dog Fox Wolf that had gathered together suddenly scattered, leaving only one standing in place. Woof, woof, woof. A new order was given. More than half of the magical beast army split up and charged at the ship and Zongu and the others. For some reason, these blue dog fox wolf hated the survivors to the extreme. They would not stop until they killed them all. The blue dog fox wolf that was left alone commanded many magical beasts to exhaust Zhun Jin's stamina. He had a fearless attitude of, "I'm right here. Come, I'll let you kill me." Zhun Jin was not afraid of sacrifice, but at this moment, the blue dog fox wolf also showed that they were not afraid of sacrifice. The blue dog fox wolf strategy was very clear. I really can't do anything to you. I can't do anything to Zhun Jin. However, even if our side loses a blue dog fox wolf or more, your side will inevitably lose even more people. In fact, other than you, Zhun Jin, everyone else will die. Kill everyone except you. Destroy the new ship, and then we'll continue to exhaust you. It doesn't matter if you fight, run, or kill all the magical beast army here. You won't be able to leave this island. Your fate is sealed. Zhun Jin's head sank. Seeing the blue dog fox wolf's tactics, what he was most afraid of had happened. Continuous screams came from behind. Zhun Jin couldn't help but look back. The situation of Zongu and the others at the moment made him angry. Zongu fought a bloody battle. Sandao, Shisuo, and the others were already injured. If Zhun Jin went back now, he could indeed save them and stabilize the situation. However, this was only temporary. With the current situation, the survivors simply couldn't defend. If Zhun Jin didn't go back, even if he completely mutated, he would only be able to kill one or a few blue dog fox wolf, but lose his companions and the new ship. His fate was sealed under the wisdom of the blue dog fox wolf. Even if Zhun Jin was strong, he was doomed to fail. Looking back, Zhun Jin's distraction created a flaw. The sandworms under the ground launched a surprise attack together. Zhun Jin avoided the first two, but was finally swallowed by the third and quickly brought deep underground. "Dad, quickly hide on the ship." The big guy roared. "Quickly get on the ship." Zongu also roared. Originally, everyone wanted to protect the new ship, but now that the magical beast attack was abnormally fierce, Zongu and the others couldn't care about the future. Everyone entered the ship, relying on the ship's boards and other things, temporarily stabilizing their position. "No!" The shipwright let out a mournful cry. The big guy was still outside the ship. Time was too tight. Everyone didn't have time to move the huge rock that was pressing down on the big guy's legs. The big guy was besieged by the magical beasts. Immediately, his flesh was lacerated and blood flowed out. He didn't have any martial skills. At the same time, facing the huge rock with his back to the enemy, he had no way to resist. Throw him a knife, let him chop off his legs, then climb up. Zongu roared as he fought. The cruel suggestion made the shipwright tremble. Although the big guy had the giant's blood, his vitality was strong, and his recovery was strong, but directly chopping off two of his legs was a heavy injury that couldn't be healed. However, if he didn't chop it off, he would die. The shipwright's face was pale, his hands were trembling, but he still threw away the knife. "Take it, aim at your knees, and chop off your legs," the shipwright shouted to the big guy. Bang, bang, bang. ZD threw out a few glass bottles of medicine, quickly forming a light green mist around the ship. The mist blocked many magical beasts, but the stronger ones were still able to fight in the green mist. Strong white rhinoceros, monkey-tail brown bear, crocodile head hammertail centipede, they were all able to move freely. The big guy howled in pain. He had chopped off his own legs. Blood flowed out, but he was able to escape and regain his freedom. He used his iron knife to chop wildly, temporarily forcing the magical beasts around him to retreat. Then he dragged his body. Using both hands, he quickly climbed up to the new ship. "Quickly come up." The shipwright reached out to the big guy. He leaned forward. Even though he knew he wasn't strong enough, he still wanted to pull the big guy and let him climb up the ship. But the big guy didn't climb up the ship. He looked up, smirking at the shipwright. He threw away his iron knife. Using his chest to push the ship, he used both hands to desperately push the ship. "Father, quickly go." A few bat monkeys pounced, landing on his shoulders and back, crazily gnawing at his flesh. But the pain they brought was just a drizzle. The greatest pain came from the big guy's broken legs. The piercing pain almost made the big guy faint, but he still used his sawed-off legs, using the cut wounds to push against the ground, supporting his body. No matter what kind of injury, no matter how painful it was, it didn't matter. As long as Father lives, it's fine. Ah! The big guy roared crazily. Under his desperate push, the new ship began to move. At first it was just a tiny bit, then an inch, 2 inches, gradually it began to move, and then it became faster and faster. Why is the ship moving? Someone was shocked. It's the big guy. Many people's eyes were red. So, my son, the old shipwright was in pain. Quickly get up here. Stop. Quickly get up here. Be good. Listen to your father. The big guy didn't say anything. He lowered his head, not daring to look at the shipwright. He used his forehead to push against the ship's deck, contributing to the pushing force. He apologized to the old shipwright in his mind. I'm sorry, Father. I'm sorry. This is the first time. I didn't listen to you. Seeing the big guy not resisting, a large number of wild beasts and demon beasts piled on top of him, brutally biting and tearing at him. The big guy's pain actually decreased. In fact, this was a sign of danger. When a person's pain was too intense, to the point of endangering their life, the brain would stop using pain to remind them, because too much pain would also create interference, preventing them from saving themselves. The big guy didn't want to save himself. He pushed the new ship step by step, giving it speed on land. He only wanted to protect his father, to send his father into the sea. Everyone on the ship was shocked. The new ship knocked away all kinds of rocks. As long as it put in a bit more effort, it would be able to completely knock away all the obstacles and enter the slipway. Before this, the slipway had already been repaired by the maintenance team and reinforced to prevent earthquakes. With this kind of speed, as long as they enter the slipway, the new ship would have a high chance of successfully entering the sea. As long as they can enter the sea, the magical beast army won't be able to threaten their lives anymore. Get the hell out of here. The old shipwright's face was covered in tears. He was in extreme pain. The big guy's strength was used up. His injuries were too heavy. He was losing too much blood. A huge rock tripped him, and he fell to the ground. His head was bleeding profusely from the impact. The wild beasts and demon beasts on top of him almost instantly drowned him. Push again. The new ship's speed greatly decreased. Hey-One anxiously shouted, "Didn't you want your father to live?" The big guy was lying on the ground. He was already in a daze, but as he heard that, he suddenly woke up. He raised his bloody hands and put them on the deck of the ship again. Push! The big guy couldn't stand up anymore, but he still wanted to push the ship. Most people's hearts were beating fast. They were fighting against the wild beasts while staring at the front of the ship. There was only one last obstacle left. No, Lord Junjin isn't back yet. ZD shouted. He'll be back. Let's go first. We can't drag him down. Hey-One shouted. No, at this time the old shipwright shouted and suddenly jumped down from the ship. He was holding a long piece of wood, madly waving it. He actually managed to drive away quite a few demon beasts on the big guy. You don't want to live anymore? The person next to him stared. He wanted to grab the old shipwright, but it was too late. Father! Seeing the old shipwright jump down and come to his side, the big guy squeezed out a bit of strength, waving his arms to protect the old shipwright. Son, hold on. Father will take you away. As soon as the shipwright shouted, a blade spider rushed over in a tricky way, dodging the big guy's arm attack and stabbing the old shipwright's chest. The old shipwright's body violently shook. Bright red blood quickly soaked his clothes. All the strength in his body quickly flowed out of the wound. Father! The big guy let out a pitiful scream. Zonga finally had the chance. He jumped down and killed the blade spider with a hammer strike. But seeing the old shipwright's injuries, his heart sank. This was a fatal injury. There was no saving him. Quickly climb on his ship. I'll cover you. Zonga shouted at the big guy. The big guy just stared blankly at the old shipwright, ignoring Zongji's shout. Hurry up and push, you damned idiot. Black Curls urged the big guy. The big guy suddenly went crazy. He crawled to the old shipwright's side, disregarding his own life to drive away the demon beasts. When the demon beasts counterattacked, he used his body to protect the old shipwright. The wounds on his body were so deep that his bones could be seen. Seeing this, Zongo let out a deep sigh. He shouted at the people on the ship, "Some of you come down, move the rocks in front of us." Another group of people pushed the ship, but in this situation, the beast tide was squeezing the hull of the ship. Who could carry out such a dangerous task? Only Sandao and a few former mercenaries jumped down, trying to save themselves with Zongo. Woof, woof, woof. Sensing these people's actions, the blue dogs, foxes, and wolves barked again. Thus, the beast tide immediately changed their target. They gave up on the old shipwright and the big guy, and went straight for the ship, attacking Zongo and the others crazily. "Where's the medicine? Is there any medicine that can be used?" Heiwan shouted at ZD. His eyes were red. The pressure of being on the verge of death made him crazy. He lost his composure. ZD lightly shook her head. "It's all used up. Damn it, damn it." Heiwan used his thin sword to kill a bat monkey and looked down the ship. Zongo, Sandao, and the others were worried about protecting themselves, not to mention clearing the obstacles and pushing the ship. Fierce magical beasts rushed to the deck. The white rhinoceros crashed into the side of the ship, creating holes. Heiwan looked around. His face was blank. The screams of the people, the trembling of the ship, the gray sky, everything was like a nightmare. "Shengming Emperor, if this is a nightmare, please let me wake up. I beg you." Heiwan prayed in his heart. He was pushed to the limit. The huge pressure made him on the verge of mental breakdown. Roar. Suddenly, a beast roar made Heiwan's body tremble. He subconsciously looked over. The beast roar was right in front of him, but it was not from a magical beast, it was from a person. But in the next moment, this person's hair grew crazily, his body expanded, and turned into a man with a tiger head. "What's going on?" Heiwan's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Then, he saw with his own eyes that his companion, who had turned into a tiger head, suddenly pounced and used his mouth full of sharp teeth to bite a brown monkey tail bear to death. Beast roars sounded one after another. It was not just him, but many others. They grew claws, teeth, tails, and horns in an instant. "What's going on?" Song Su, ZD, and the others were extremely shocked. These beastly companions seemed to have lost their minds, only the desire to kill. The magical beasts died one after another, and even the humans around them were in their choice of attack. "They're crazy. They even killed their companions. Get away from them." The survivors huddled together, occupying the corner of the aft building of the deck. They were extremely shocked and looked at the counterattack of their beastly companions in confusion. These beastly people started a crazy massacre. Their delirium made them disregard their lives, and the magical beasts were defeated. All along, the human body had been weak. Even if one's cultivation of battle energy was successful and their physical fitness was high, there was often a huge gap between them and magical beasts of the same level of life. But now, after these humans had turned into beasts, their explosive strength, defense, agility, and so on completely surpassed the magical beasts. Since the start of the battle, the magical beast army's offensive was hindered for the first time. Soon, the magical beasts around the hull were cleared, and the beastly people continued their counterattack. It seemed that they would deal with whoever was the biggest threat. Jinjin came out. He had completely mutated underground and killed all the sandworms before he could escape. He hurried back to the main battlefield, only to find these beastly people. At this moment, Jinjin was extremely shocked and puzzled. What's going on? Could it be that they also have a core? Chapter 153. The beast tide retreated. After the war creatures appeared, they launched a frenzied counterattack, and the magical beasts were actually defeated by them. The blue dog fox wolf did their best to command and display exquisite tactics. If not for Jinjin, their efforts might have been effective. After seeing the weird creatures outburst and counterattack, Jean suppressed the shock and doubt in his heart and continued to hunt down the blue dog fox wolf at the back. Most of the magical beast army's strength was concentrated at the front lines, around the new ship. The tactic they used was to temporarily ignore Jean. In the end, because of the sudden appearance of the war creatures, Jean gained the initiative. After killing 3 blue dog fox wolves in a row, the last remaining blue dog fox wolf finally escaped far away with the remnants of its defeated army. Jean could not catch up to it. In fact, his stamina was almost depleted. Beheading the leader was extremely difficult, especially in a head-on battle like this. After losing 90% of their military strength, the remaining magical beast army was no longer a threat. The blue dog fox wolf's fleeing appearance was also very frightened. It would not cause any trouble for the time being. Not long after the magical beast army retreated, the war creatures who had erupted also fell to the ground with a thud, one by one losing all signs of life. We survived. Many people sat down on the deck, paralyzed. I actually survived. After that, more people cried tears of joy. What the hell is going on? What the hell? Heywan stood on the ship, looking at the corpses of the magical beasts that had died tragically around him, as well as the war creatures that had died one by one. Fear still lingered on his face. All of this happened too suddenly, and it deeply shocked him. Jean rushed back. He was still wearing the golden scorpion armor. Because he was a war creature, he did not completely mutate in this battle. Seeing that Song Su, ZD, and the others were in a sorry state with some minor injuries, Jean could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. However, even though they had won the battle, the survivors had suffered heavy casualties. Originally, there were more than 200 people, but after the earthquake and the slaughter, there were less than 50 people left. There were many lightly wounded, but few seriously wounded. The intensity of the battle was too great, and there were no reserves like the defensive battle of the camp. Basically, those who were seriously wounded would be quickly killed. The others could immerse themselves in their own emotions, but as the leader, Jean could not. Under his orders, people began to quickly clean up the battlefield and treat the wounded. The old shipwright is still breathing, and the big guy is still alive, but things aren't looking good either. Not long after, someone reported. This result was somewhat inconceivable because many people on the deck had died. The father and son outside the boat were still on the verge of death. In fact, this was all thanks to the blue dog fox and wolf. It was their orders that made the magical beast let the father and son go for the time being. Jean quickly rushed over. The big guy was on the ground, but his arms were still wrapped around the old shipwright. His injuries were so severe that people mistakenly thought he was going to die. His cut-off legs were badly mutilated, but because of the giant's blood, it stopped bleeding. The old shipwright's injuries were fatal. He lay on the ground, motionless. Because he lost too much blood, his face was ashen. But when he saw Jean, his already lifeless eyes suddenly emitted a glimmer of light. Obviously, he had something to say. ZD, is there any way? In grief, Jean looked at his fiancée for help. ZD did not disappoint him, and quickly took out a bottle of medicine from her empty purse. Jean took it and poured it into the old shipwright's mouth. The old shipwright's face immediately flushed red. Sir, Lord Jean, I have something to ask of you. Please promise me, take my son away, take him away. The old shipwright begged in a weak voice. He's still alive, I'll take him away. He's a true warrior. Jean immediately agreed. No, father, I want to be with you. The big guy cried, his chin on the ground, looking at the old shipwright. His injuries were too severe. He had no strength left. He couldn't get up. The giant's blood was once again keeping him alive. But his face was filled with the will to die. If the old shipwright died, he didn't want to live anymore. The old shipwright couldn't get up. He couldn't even turn his head. He couldn't see the big guy, but he knew the big guy was behind him. The old shipwright smiled bitterly. With a regretful, sad, nostalgic, but also hopeful, he whispered, I'm sorry, son. Father can't take you away, but you have to live. You're still so young. Father, I won't go. I want to be with you. If you die, then we'll die together. The big guy's attitude was very firm. He already realized that the old shipwright's death was unavoidable. His face was filled with tears. Idiot, the old shipwright wanted to scold him, but his tone was light. It was more like he was trying to comfort and pamper him. No matter how the old shipwright persuaded, the big guy wouldn't change his attitude. Jinjin also showed a worried expression. Even if he knocked the big guy unconscious, he couldn't let him live. He understood the big guy. He couldn't stop the big guy from seeking death. After a few words of persuasion, the old shipwright couldn't hold on. He felt his life quickly slipping away. He couldn't drag this out. In a moment of desperation, an idea flashed through his mind. He forced his voice a bit higher. Idiot, I'm not your father. No, father, you can't chase me away. I want to die with you. You're my only family. The old shipwright looked at Jinjin. You idiot, Lord Jinjin. He's your father. Your real father. The big guy stared. Father, what are you talking about? When the surrounding people heard this, they were also very shocked. The old shipwright looked at Jinjin, his face full of pleading. Jinjin was silent. He nodded slightly to the old shipwright. The old shipwright's eyes were filled with extreme gratitude. He coughed violently, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. He continued to speak to the big guy. There are some things that you already knew, idiot. I'm a human. You're a giant. I'm only your foster father. Sigh. At this point, this secret, I don't want to hide it anymore, but I also have human blood in me. You idiot. I'm only a normal shipwright. How could I be related to a female giant? Didn't you ask me a while ago? Didn't you really want to see your real parents? Now I'll tell you. Your real father is right in front of you. It's him, Lord Jinjin. The big guy opened his mouth wide. He stared blankly at the old shipwright, then at Jinjin. The others maintained their silence. They could all see that the old shipwright was deliberately lying to the big guy so that he could live on. Jinjin sighed. He looked at the big guy. It's like this. Big guy, you are actually my son. No, no. The big guy shook his head. He believed it, but this news was too shocking. He couldn't accept it immediately. What else? The dying old shipwright was very anxious. Your father is stronger than you, and this old man is just a normal person. Your father also understands you, loves you. How many times has he only knocked you out? He has never hurt you. Do you think that other people can do this? He also values you. He doesn't discriminate against you at all. Don't you think it's strange? You want to be close to him, right? This is very natural. Because of your blood relationship, you are attracted to each other, unconsciously getting close to each other. This is the blood relationship between father and son. The old shipwright's nonsense made the surrounding people grin. They forced themselves to endure. But to the big guy, the old shipwright's words were enlightening. Every word was the hard truth. I wanted to hide this secret before, because if this secret was exposed, it wouldn't be good for your real father. He is a noble and a knight. To have an illegitimate son like you, to him, it is very dishonorable. But you idiot, you want to die with me, this old man, so I can only reveal it. Forgive me, foolish boy. I am only your foster father. If you want to live, your real father is here. Quickly call him father. The old shipwright urged. What he said was the truth. Having such a half-giant son was a stain on the human noble's life. It would destroy the noble's reputation. Not to mention that Jinjin was a temple knight. Poor little guy. Being born in this world is your misfortune. Maybe you should give him a release. How can we raise a child on the ship? The captain said. The old shipwright shook his head. He couldn't do it. The captain said, then when we reach the port, find a suitable person and entrust him. Only then did the old shipwright nod his head. However, how could he find a suitable person? The Pig Kiss docked at the port many times, but the time was very short. In a short time, the old shipwright was unfamiliar with the place. It was hard for him to find a trustworthy and suitable person. I can only go to the next port. With such thoughts, the baby stayed on the ship under the care of the old shipwright. Damn it, he pooped again. He eats a lot, so he poops a lot. The old shipwright frowned as he changed the baby's diaper. He has a fever. What should I do? What should I do? The old shipwright was anxious. Why is he crying? Is he hungry? He is clearly full. The old shipwright couldn't find the reason. He could only learn to sing a lullaby. Little boy, don't cry, little boy. Don't make a fuss. Let me cherish you. The surrounding crew members laughed. Hey, shipwright, this is a lullaby. How is this a lullaby? Time passed. A year later, the baby started to show signs of being out of the ordinary. He could eat too much. The extent to which he could eat had already exceeded the shipwright's tolerance. The cabin was a mess. The baby still continued to rummage through the cabinets. What are you doing? You little bastard. You ate all my tobacco? You idiot, idiot. The old shipwright slapped his butt. Plop. The old shipwright collapsed on the deck. Oh my God, you're crazy, shipwright. You gave all your food to that baby and did such heavy work yourself. You fainted on the deck. You should be glad that today's storm isn't that big. Why are you working so hard? I really don't understand you. If it were up to me, you should have thrown him away a long time ago. The crew members all shook their heads, expressing that they didn't understand. I should have thrown him away, but who should I throw him to? Late at night, the old shipwright was woken up by the pain. Why did you bite me? You idiot. I'm not a girl. There's no milk here. The injured and furious old shipwright slapped the big guy's small buttocks again. The baby, wah wah wah. They reached the shore. The old shipwright came to the bar. The bartender saw an acquaintance and smiled. Old shipwright, do you want rum or beer? Do you have milk? The bartender was stunned. Human milk is fine too. The bartender was stunned, then looked at the old shipwright again. Old man, your taste has changed a lot. Did you get stimulated by something? The crew members around him laughed at him. He's gone crazy. It's all because of his son. That's definitely a little monster. I've never seen a baby that can eat so much. Oh my God, his appetite is even bigger than mine. What did you do? Oh my God. Half a day later, the shipwright looked at the cracks and even holes on the deck, his hands toward his hair, almost going crazy. The baby sat on the side, confused. Father, you told me to work hard. The pig-kissed captain's face was gloomy. Throw him away. If I keep him, one day my deck will be gone. My sails will be gone. Maybe, when I wake up from my afternoon nap, the entire ship will be gone. The old shipwright begged, but the captain's attitude was firm. Plop. The old shipwright bent his knees and directly knelt on the ground. No matter the price, I'll compensate you. I can build ships. When you recruited me, didn't you see my ability? The captain narrowed his eyes and looked down at the shipwright. If I remember correctly, you still owe me a debt, right? Not long later, you'll be able to pay off your debt and regain your freedom. Then I'll let my debt be extended. The captain snorted. You're already so old, according to your current salary, including the losses this time. If you want to pay off your debt, you'll have to work for me for 3 more years. But in these 3 years, won't the baby make any mistakes? Don't be stupid. He's a retard. He won't be able to learn anything, and he'll even mess up something normal. If this continues, you won't be able to pay off your debt for the rest of your life. The old shipwright suddenly raised his head and straightened his upper body. Then I'll pay for the rest of my life. The captain was stunned. A boarding battle had just ended. Fresh blood flowed on the deck. The shipwright bandaged the baby's wound. I told you not to charge forward, you idiot. But they hit father. They're bad people. The baby retorted. You even learned to talk back. The shipwright angrily stared at the baby. Damn it, there's not enough medicine. The bleeding won't stop. Damn it, damn it. Father, don't worry, I'm not in pain. The baby comforted. You shut up. The shipwright subconsciously slapped the baby's head, but just as he moved, he realized that it was inappropriate and quickly withdrew most of his strength. Late at night, on the deck, the baby's snores were deafening. The old shipwright sat in front of him, looking at the bandages on his body, sighed, and whispered to himself, It's not that father is cruel, silly boy. It's not easy to stay on this ship. No one likes to raise trash. You have to contribute. Your father's body is getting worse day by day. I hope that one day you can survive on your own without me. After some tenderness, The madam persuaded the old shipwright. I've been a widow for many years. I have a small manor outside Garden City. Come with me. There are no storms in the manor. You can even build a small boat with my support. I know that building boats is your dream. But I have to give him up, right? The old shipwright sat on the bed, bending over and looking out the door. He knew that the baby was outside the door. He must be squatting on the ground, staring at the door. Of course, the madam's attitude was without hesitation. A bastard mixed with the blood of giants, and a fool. If I bring him back to the manor, I will be laughed at by everyone. Then I refuse. The old shipwright shook his head, his attitude firm. This is already the third time I've mentioned it. The madam frowned, her expression unhappy. Are you sure? You don't have any blood relations with him. I'm sure, honorable madam. The old shipwright sighed. I can live without him, but he can't live without me. In this world mountain, he only has me. To be able to receive madam's favor is the luckiest thing in my life. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you. The madam's voice turned cold. Do you know what you're giving up? The old shipwright looked at the door and smiled. Then do you know what I'm getting? The drug's effect dissipated. The old shipwright's eyelids became heavier. He tried his best to hold on, but could only open his eyes a little. His body had used up all its energy. An unparalleled exhaustion enveloped his body. I'm so tired. I can finally rest this time. But I'm worried. Is this the only way? Lord Jinjin, he is definitely not an ordinary person. As long as he reveals a little bit from now on, he will be able to feed that fool. After all, that fool is also very capable. He admitted my lies. I also believe in his character. But there is still a trace of regret. How I wish to hear your voice at the end of my life. Just one more time. Even one more time would be good. The old shipwright's breath became weaker and weaker. The baby propped up his upper body. Using his hands to support himself, he tried his best to crawl towards the old shipwright. Looking at his father walking towards death, he stopped his movements midway, a huge sadness like a tsunami, drowning his entire body. But other than sadness, there was also endless loss and fear. The support that supported him to survive in this cruel world is gone. The gentleness that supported him to face this cruel world is gone. It was like he suddenly fell from the sky, like a thin leaf floating in the abyss. How big his body was, how small and weak his soul was. At this time, Zhenjin walked forward, half kneeling on the ground, facing the baby, opened his arms, and hugged him. The baby was stunned. At this moment, his falling heart seemed to have returned to the ground. The young man sighed, softly saying, "If you want to cry, cry it out." The baby's mouth curved, his lower lip covering his upper lip, constantly trembling. He tried his best to hold back, not wanting to cry, because when he was very young, he cried loudly on the ship, very annoying, so the old shipwright taught him a lesson. The big guy bit his upper lip hard, but tears were already rolling down his face. After a moment of silence, the pain and sadness in his heart finally made it hard for him to hold on. "Father," he suddenly roared. He was extremely sorrowful and heartbroken. Then, "Wah!" he cried loudly in Zhenjin's arms. He cried until his voice was hoarse. The sound waves spread through the rubble, shaking the broken ship, echoing in the rainforest. During the battle, the hastily lit bonfire was still burning. Under the illumination of the fire, the old shipwright was no longer breathing, but the corner of his mouth seemed to be slightly raised, as if he was smiling. Chapter 154. This was the bottom compartment of the new ship. According to the plan, it was used to store supplies, so it had the most space. There was a row of work creature corpses in the cabin. The dissection was over. Zhenjin, Song-Su, and the others walked out of the cabin. They don't have blood nuclei in their bodies. How did this happen? Zhenjin had been there the whole time and had witnessed the entire dissection process. The fact that the truth was different from what he had expected made him even more puzzled. When they returned to the cabin, used to discuss matters, Song-Su couldn't help but sigh. It's hard to imagine. This kind of beastification isn't magic, but it actually changed the human bloodline. It's really too amazing. They were originally of human bloodline, but now they've all become mixed blood beastmen and humans. Just from the current dissection, we can't see any flaws at all. It's as if these people were born like this. Zhenjin asked, "So, how did they become like this?" Song Su shook his head and sighed. "I'm not sure. I can only do a simple dissection. It's normal that I can't see the deeper reason. I'm not a magician." "No, even a magician might not be able to see the reason behind it," ZD said with a serious expression. "The master of this island is really too unfathomable. Maybe our previous guess was wrong. Those modified magical beasts weren't cultivated in the alchemy room or the magician tower, but on this island. The entire island is his breeding ground." "What do you mean?" Zhong Gu frowned. "Don't you think that these creatures are very similar to those modified magical beasts?" ZD said, "Of course, whether it's creatures or modified magical beasts, they're all like pieced-together parts of various lives," Sandow said. Zhenjin knew what ZD meant. He had a distressed expression. "So, the key question is, what exactly caused our companions to become like this?" "ZD, have you found anything?" ZD shook her head. "I don't have any evidence. I'm just guessing. The master of the island had set up a gigantic magic array or some other kind of arrangement on the island. These arrangements forced us to teleport randomly, creating an environment where magic was forbidden and even had the effect of controlling the weather. Other than that, perhaps it can also subtly change the various life forms on the island. I'm afraid this is the reason why our companions turned into beasts." "Then why didn't we mutate?" Someone raised an objection. "Is it personal strength?" "No, they're normal people who haven't mutated. Bronze-level members have also turned into beasts and died." "Did he eat the food here?" "Who hasn't eaten the magical beast meat here? Who hasn't drunk the water here? Is it because he was injured before?" Someone guessed. "We're basically all injured." "No, I'm talking about serious injuries, or a more unique injury. That's too hard to calculate. Even I might not be able to remember everything that happened on this island." Zhen Jin's heart skipped a beat as he listened to the crowd's discussion. He suddenly remembered that he had been stung by the fire venom bee. At that time, his injuries were extremely serious. After that, he had been instilled with the blood of the monkey-tail brown bear. Song Su said in a low voice, "Maybe we've already started to mutate, but the degree hasn't reached the level of qualitative change, so we haven't turned into beasts. Beasts might require a lot of mental stimulation, otherwise when we were defending the island, there should have been 1 or 2 beasts." Hearing Song Su's guess, everyone's heart sank. Song Su continued, "Or maybe these transformed magical beasts weren't pure wild beasts or magical beasts in the first place." Heiwan's face turned pale. "What do you mean? Don't you think that the blue dog fox wolf is too intelligent? If they were originally human." Song Su's gaze under the lens was so calm that it was frightening. Horror quickly spread in everyone's hearts. Song Su continued, "Let's imagine, are we really the only victims? The shipwreck happened too suddenly. After meeting up with everyone, I asked as many people as possible. The crew said that the Pig's Kiss was in good condition on the night of the shipwreck. There are no signs of shipwreck at all. The master of the island didn't have to personally attack us. If he had some kind of arrangement on the sea near the island, for someone as powerful as him, destroying the Pig's Kiss would be an extremely easy task. If we were to make a bold guess, the Pig's Kiss isn't special. It's very likely that it wasn't the first case in the Yuhai Islands. If there were ships that had been shipwrecked before, then where did the survivors go? The degree of transformation of these people was different. Some were mild, while others were more severe. Perhaps this means that the degree of transformation isn't fixed, but can be continuously deepened. If they completely transformed, what would they become? Would they become a monkey-tail brown bear, a crocodile-head hammertail brown bear, or a blue dog fox wolf? Everyone, including Zhen Jin, had ugly expressions on their faces. Shi Suo blinked as he listened. In the past few hundred years, the technology of ships has been constantly improving, and the communication between continents has become very frequent. There are also more and more pirates on the sea route, and pirate activities are becoming more and more rampant. The Pig's Kisses route is already relatively safe. I always thought that those unfortunate ships that went missing either died in the waves or at the hands of pirates. But wait, if these transformed magical beasts were once humans, then they were also victims. Why didn't they come and help us overthrow the master of the island? Song Su shook his head. Their temperament has changed drastically. Just like the beastmen, they were our companions one moment, but the next moment, they could kill us. Perhaps after becoming a magical beast, they knew deep in their hearts that they couldn't go back, so they hated us even more. This kind of change in temperament is very likely the work of the master of the island. After surviving on this island for so long, the truth of this island was still covered in layers of fog. Song Su's words seemed to have cleared up a corner of the fog. However, the truth was so cruel and terrible that it made almost everyone shudder. Hei-Wan grabbed her curly hair, gritted her teeth, and cursed, "I've had enough of this damn place. What's the point of guessing so much? Let's hurry up and fix the ship and leave this place as soon as possible." Yes, we have to do our best to fix it. If we delay any longer, it will be bad if the magical beast army reinforcements come. Lon Zao agreed. Shi Suo shook his head and smiled bitterly, stating the truth in a very heavy tone. The situation is worse than you think. I'm afraid this ship can't be fixed. How is that possible? Many people stared. Sigh. Shi Suo sighed deeply. Don't stare at me. I'm the same as you. Of course, I want the new ship to be in better condition. But it's in terrible condition. Believe me, although I'm not as good as the old shipwright, this ship's condition is too obvious. No matter which cashier you ask, as long as you have a little bit of experience, you'll know that this ship can't sail in the sea. Don't think that the hull is still there. The structure hasn't been damaged much, and only a few cabins seem to have been damaged. But it's useless. The keel almost broke. We can repair it with some difficulty and let it linger on in the calm sea. But it can't compete with the wind and waves. We still have half of the voyage. How can there be no wind and waves? In fact, compared to the first half, the second half will be much more stormy. Using this ship to sail is simply courting death. The cabin fell into a dead silence. What about rebuilding the ship? After a while, someone broke the silence. We don't have a shipwright. Shi Suo sighed. Hei-Wan retorted, but we have the blueprints. Many of us have participated in it and have experience. Shi Suo shook his head. It's too difficult. Do you think it's so easy to build a ship? The shipwright designed the blueprints based on the existing materials. We may be able to modify the blueprints, but what about the wood and nails? We need to gather materials again. Rainforest wood is mostly substandard. We need wood from the forest. This ship has a lot of materials, but dismantling it will take a lot of labor and time. When dismantling it, it will be violent destruction and a lot of things will be damaged. We need iron or to rebuild the kiln. We have less than a quarter of the original crew, and building a new ship will take more time. At that time, the magical beast army will attack us. What should we do? So there's no hope. Hei-Wan stared. Maybe we can only wait for rescue. Shi Suo said this and couldn't help but look at Jinjin. The meaning behind his words was very clear. If a big shot like Jinjin was in trouble, the 100 Needles family would definitely come to their rescue. Jinjin smiled bitterly and shook his head. I can't guarantee rescue. We have no way to send out the request for help right now. Hei-Wan also shook his head, his face bleak. It's been several months, and we still haven't received any rescue. This is obviously not normal. I know the route of the Pig's Kiss. This area has been explored long ago, and there are relatively few pirate activities. But with so many ships, none of them have ever found this island. This island can be isolated from the outside world and hide itself. Everyone discussed for a while, but there was no good way. It seemed that the only choice was to wait for rescue. Let's rest first. We can't rush to find a solution in one night. Jinjin finally said. The new ship couldn't sail, but it was still the best choice for a camp. The night sky was dotted with stars. On the deck, the big guy was sleeping. The first floor wasn't built, so the big guy didn't have a suitable room. Jean sat in front of the big guy, watching his chest weakly rise and fall with every breath, and he smiled bitterly in his heart. After such a fierce battle, Jean was extremely tired, but the anxiety, doubt, loss, and helplessness in his heart made him unable to sleep. The old shipwright had asked for help before his death, but now he couldn't guarantee his survival. Wait for rescue? Intuition in his heart told Jean that there was probably no rescue. Looking up at the starry sky, the young knight's heart was filled with misery. He worked hard, tried his best to survive. How many times did he struggle on the line between life and death? How many times did he clench his teeth after failing? But in the end, he still fell into such a situation. We were clearly about to succeed. If we knew this, we would have sped up, shortened the construction period, and brought forward the time caused by the new ship. Unfortunately, the truth was like this. Was there a medicine for regret in this world? At least Jean didn't. He couldn't do it again. Looking down, he saw the big guy's broken leg. He had to admit that it was as if they had broken their legs and were trapped on the island. There was no way out. It was a desperate situation. Chapter 155. Jean, who had fallen into a desperate situation, was still full of doubts. They don't have a heart core, but I do. Why? What is the cause of this? What is the cause of the heart core's formation? Is it poison? Is it because my injuries are more serious and my body contains more fire poison? Or is it luck, willpower? Or is it a combination of strength, luck, and injuries? In addition to doubts, there was also a lot of fear in Jean's heart. Will I become like this one day? Will I fall into a state of complete berserk madness without any rationality and even kill my companions? Is my temperament really not affected by the heart core? As Jean continued to reflect, the fear in his heart deepened. No, I'm afraid I'm deeply affected. I was so worried and afraid of the heart core before, but due to the circumstances, after using it too many times, I began to unconsciously accept it. Now, I'm deeply dependent on it. If I hadn't been self-reflecting, I'm afraid I would have been infatuated with it. Every time I use the heart core and transform into a monster, my temperament seems to become arrogant, and I despise all life forms weaker than me from the bottom of my heart. Absorb and transform. I'm already immersed in this power, and gradually can't control myself. My actions, my thoughts, are actually deviating from the path of a holy knight. I seem to have been falling. God, my lord, the great Shengming Emperor, please respond to me. I beg for your mercy. I beg for your salvation. Here, there's your lost lamb. Jean once again half knelt on the deck, facing the direction of the Shengming continent, and lowered his head to pray. Like all the previous prayers, the result was still no response. The prayer this time was different from the recent night prayers. Jean's heart could no longer find the slightest bit of peace and comfort, because he realized his own depravity and also realized a possibility. The reason why the Shengming Emperor did not respond to him, was it because he had already fallen? Could it be that I'm a depraved fallen knight? What should I do? Should I confess? Tell my companions that I'm also a mutation, that I'm actually a monster? No, I can't do that. As the leader, Jean knew very well that the current situation of the team was very dangerous. Their collapse could happen at any moment. Previously, there was hope for a new ship to sail, but now, everyone was in a desperate situation. Even if I've already fallen and am no longer Temple Knight, even if I am actually a modified magical beast, I should still play the role of a leader. They needed a leader, a Knight Templar, someone to rely on, and a new hope. Even Jean himself had no one to rely on and no hope. This was the burden that a leader should bear. Jean gradually fell out of breath. After experiencing all sorts of hardships, his mental state had transformed many times, and he was no longer the same as before. However, the heavy feeling that made it hard for him to breathe struck him again. Once again, he realized his naivety. His fear came not only from his surroundings, but also from his own future and the safety of his companions. Now, he was still afraid of himself. If at some point I completely become a beast, lose my rationality, and hurt others, what should I do? I might even kill Sang-Soo, Lan Zhao, and even ZD with my own hands. If something like that happens, what should I do? Can I control all sorts of mutations? For a short period of time, it seems so. It seems that I have a heart core. The heart core should allow me to perfectly control the mutations, right? Zhenjin had no way to explode. He was not even sure how the heart core was formed. Perhaps he was not far from completely becoming a berserk beast. He was not far from completely going crazy. Perhaps in a few days, which would be the next time. Perhaps I'm not the only one with this hidden danger. Others have it too. These beastly companions are only the first batch. Next, there will be a second batch, a third batch, and even the last survivors will become one of the magical beasts seen on this island. They will hate all outsiders and only think of themselves as magical beasts. Their humanity will be gone, and they will have no memories. This future was so cruel that Zhen Jin felt a chill in his heart every time he thought of it. He suddenly thought, wait, could it be because of my amnesia? Why would my beastly companions fall into madness? Maybe it's because of the intense conflict and contradiction between their inherent memories and their own life form. They cannot accept it and thus become crazy. Why am I the only one who can control the mutations? Am I the only one who has a heart core? Maybe amnesia is the main reason. It's because I have amnesia, but I still adhere to my beliefs and the path of a knight. Therefore, I did not have the intense conflict between the two and retain my humanity to the greatest extent. How does the master of this island make people become beastly? Maybe the environment he changed was to make people lose their humanity. After a long time here, our humanity will be eroded by our bestial nature and gradually devoured. The more devoured, the deeper our bestial nature. In the end, we will completely lose our humanity, be completely covered by our bestial nature, and become completely crazy. And every time, I adhere to my principles and bottom line. This is the victory of humanity over the bestial nature. The accumulation of these victories has allowed me to have a heart core, allowing me to rationally control the mutations, while others cannot. If this conjecture is true, then if I use my heart core to absorb my beastly companions, will I absorb their bestial nature and allow them to regain their rationality? No, my heart core absorbs the bloodline. My beastly companions have a mixture of magical beast bloodline and human bloodline. I will absorb all these bloodlines. Those magical beast bloodlines, actually I have all of them now, but I don't have human bloodlines. If I add these bloodlines, will I be able to stabilize my human nature? Will it prolong the time before I become completely crazy? Thinking of this, Zhan Jin's body suddenly trembled, and his face turned pale. Damn it, what's wrong with me? I actually want to attack my companions, attack the human race? However, another voice sounded in Zhen Jin's heart. Don't restrict your actions anymore. You should be bolder. We are now in a desperate situation. If you let yourself be restrained, it will be too late when the final death comes. You can't do it again, can you? Besides, I'm not asking you to kill people with your own hands. I'm just asking you to absorb those dead companions. They're going to be buried anyway and have no other value. It's just recycling waste. Hurry up and do it. It will be too late if you don't. These people just died not long ago. If you absorb them now, it will be much more beneficial than doing it later. Don't forget your family. You're also thinking of others. If it weren't for these people dragging you down, you could have mutated and escaped from this island by yourself. It's because of them that you are staying here, isn't it? Don't cling on to unnecessary things. Think carefully. How many times have you regretted it? What were you thinking when you were almost killed by Spear Scorpion? Just now, don't you regret it? Do you want the tragedy to happen again? This time was old shipwright. What about next time? Lan Zhao? Sang-Soo? Or ZD? No, don't say any more. Don't say any more. Zhen Jin was in great pain. He went from kneeling to kneeling on both knees. He lowered his head and buried his face in his palms. His thoughts were overflowing. He suspected that he had fallen. The confidence that had always supported him had dissipated by more than half. He started to be confused. He could not tell which of these thoughts he was pondering were rational advice and which were depraved temptations. Zhenjin fell into an unprecedented turmoil and confusion. In the next moment, he was really shaken. Rumble. Amidst the huge explosion, the earth and sky shook. Once again, the earth and mountains shook. The sleeping survivors all screamed in fear and ran out of the cabin with all their might. The earthquake came again, and the scale was even bigger than the previous one. In front of everyone's eyes, the ground cracked open. The island shifted, and the crack became bigger and bigger. It extended from the direction of the volcano and directly split open the beach, forming the estuary. The seawater poured in, and the waves surged. After 20 breaths of time, the earthquake slowly subsided. A brand new river appeared in front of everyone. Everyone looked at the wide river and were shocked speechless. After a long time, the people who were still in shock gradually came to their senses. Xiao Fan directly knelt on the ground and cried softly, "Can we really hold on? Can we really escape from here?" No one could answer her question. Even Zhenjin was silent. Even if we can hold on, this island won't be able to hold on for much longer. Heiwan sighed. Everyone was in despair. The survivors were gloomy. "Maybe I have a way," ZD suddenly said. These words attracted everyone's attention. ZD's face revealed a look of hesitation. "Hurry up and say it. Why are you hesitating at this time?" Heiwan urged. ZD took a deep breath and suddenly pointed at the volcano. "We can go to the center. There might be hope of survival there." Almost everyone's eyes widened, wondering if they had heard wrong. Song Su, Zhenjin, and Zongge faltered for a moment before coming to their senses and remaining silent. ZD continued. "Do you still remember what we analyzed? This island has a master. He must be a mighty figure. He modified this island, modified the demonic beasts, and even controlled the weather. He seems to be cultivating biological weapons here. However, regardless of whether it's a magic sealing environment, weather control, or teleportation, all of these require a magic spell formation. There must be a core of a magic spell formation on this island, or it could even be a Magus Tower. As long as we can take over the core, we'll have a chance of escaping. Please, how can we be a match for the master of this island?" Shisua had only just finished yelling when he was dumbstruck. He stared blankly at the river and the fissure, then at the erupting volcano in the distance, and then at the dark volcanic clouds above his head. Shisua suddenly yelled, "I'm afraid something has happened to the master of this island. The magic spell formation is obviously out of control. The volcano is erupting, and the earth is cracking. No, wait. When we just returned to the beach, the weather became very abnormal. It was either torrential rain or continuous rain. We've never encountered anything like that before. It's very likely that it was already out of control at that time. Maybe it was even earlier." Zhenjin said, "In our earliest days, we encountered the blue dog fox wolf. These kinds of demonic beasts are all alone. But when we encountered them in the forest, they had already formed a magical beast army around them. Controlling the magical beast army is a great burden for the blue dog fox wolf. Creating the strange fragrance consumes magic power. The blue dog fox wolf has been controlling the magical beast army for a long time. It must devour other demonic beasts to replenish its magic power and continue to create the strange fragrance." Song Su nodded and added, "And the larger the magical beast army is, the greater the burden on the surrounding ecological environment. These demonic beasts all need to eat. So, the blue dog fox wolf's entanglement with the magical beast army is obviously not normal. We stayed in the small valley, and the magical beast army took the initiative to attack and continued to reinforce them. This posture is obviously to wipe out the enemy. Let's make a bold guess. It's very likely that the master of this island gave the order to control the blue dog fox wolf and let them destroy all outsiders. If he's in good condition, he can destroy us in the time it takes to breathe, and the island won't be so unstable. But he didn't do that. He left the island alone and only ordered the magical beast army to deal with us. This means that he's very weak and can only let the blue dog fox wolf fight. He's also afraid that we'll escape and expose this place. It's even very likely that he's already dead, or he's tied up outside for some reason and can't come back in time. Zonga nodded. That's true. Now is the best time for us to attack the Central Command. If we delay, we'll only die. Everyone was stunned. Heiwan swallowed his saliva. Then why do we have to rush to the Central Command? The volcano is erupting there. Can you be sure that the Central Command is there? Song-Su took out a map from his pocket. According to the map we've explored so far, the central area is the volcanic landform. Basically, the Central Command of the Magic Circle, or the Magic Tower, is in the central area. ZD added. The operation of the Magic Circle requires a huge amount of energy. The Master of the Island may extract the surrounding elements, or he may use the magic pool in a Magic Tower. If there's a problem, the place with the most severe turbulence is likely to be the Central Command or the Magic Tower. Heiwan frowned. This is all speculation. You have no evidence. Zonga nodded and smiled. Without evidence, who would be able to take it out? But this is enough for us to take a gamble. Do we have any other way? Everyone was silent again. No, Heiwan said, we can wait for rescue. Attacking the center of the island is too crazy. The volcano is erupting there, and there's the magical beast army along the way. We might even die halfway. No, we'll use a boat. Zhun Jin's voice came. This will save us a lot of time and travel. Heiwan was stunned. Shisua's eyes lit up, and he shouted, That's right, we can repair the boat. Although we can't sail, there's an inland river in front of us. There's no wind or waves. Volcanic clouds cover the sky above us, and it won't even rain. Zhun Jin continued. In fact, even if we wait for rescue, there will be hidden dangers. Don't forget those companions who died in beast form. We're likely to have been eroded by the environment and fallen for the master of the island. Can the means of a mighty person like him be easily neutralized? Can we just find a priest and purify it? Also, he played with us and humiliated us. Are we just going to let this go? Just now, the Shengming Emperor gave me a revelation. Zhun Jin pointed at the river. Everyone was stunned again. Could it be that this river was created by the Shengming Emperor? No wonder we didn't die. Godzilla is unfathomable. Divine Knight, Song-Su bowed deeply to Zhun Jin and sighed. This may be your path to becoming a hero. My Lord Jinjin. Almost everyone present felt their scalp tingle. They felt like they were witnessing history. If the hero's epic was sung in the future, would they also have a part in it? Jinjin looked around and confirmed that the people's minds had changed. He firmly ordered loudly, It's decided. Do your best to repair the boat, cremate our companions, and collect as much food, water, weapons, and so on. We will set sail. We will go to the center of the island. Chapter 156. Pieces of gravel were moved away. Jinjin personally led the crew to dig out as much of the buried resources as possible. Ultrasonic detection once again showed its value. Jinjin could always accurately determine the location of the resources. Knocking and knocking. The holes in the ship's side were patched up with layers of wooden planks, like patches of various sizes. The keel was the most important part of the repair. A large amount of wood was used to fix the broken parts, and then iron sheets and nails were used to fix them. The damage to the sails was not serious, because they were all folded up and hung on the mast. A few days later, the rails were fixed. 1, 2, 3. Everyone shouted and worked together. The big guy was among them. The ship became faster and faster. It slid along the rails and fell into the river, creating a huge splash. The ship shook a few times and then stabilized on the White River. At this moment, the ship had become ugly. The side of the ship and the deck were covered with wooden planks. There were 2 rows of holes on both sides of the ship where the side of the ship was higher than the bottom deck. Long wooden paddles extended from the holes. There were a total of 10 pairs of paddles. The paddles closest to the rudder at the stern were especially large. They were specially prepared for the big guy. Broken legs and the death of the shipwright made the big guy depressed. He was silent, and almost every night, he secretly cried. According to the shipwright's last words, the big guy really treated Jinjin as his biological father. He only listened to Jin's orders. He would only eat food and water provided by Jinjin. Jinjin led the big guy into the cabin first. The big guy's legs could not walk, so he crawled in with both hands. Then the others filed in. 18 people were chosen to go to the bottom deck. Each person was responsible for a long wooden paddle. The big guy sat at the back, and each person was responsible for 2. The rest of the people worked on the deck. They were responsible for raising the sails, arranging the ropes, lifting the anchor, and so on. Shisuo controlled the rudder. Before, when they were building the ship, Sang-Soo organized many teaching activities for the crew. Basically, everyone was trained how to control the ship. The sails were raised. Accompanied by the sound of drums, 20 wooden paddles were inserted into the river at the same time. Then they slowly moved out of the water and then fell back into the water. The ship successfully set sail. The river was muddy, and Jinjin often stood at the bow of the boat. He had been secretly using ultrasonic waves to investigate the situation under the water. He was worried that some ferocious man-made magical beast would appear in the water, and he was even more worried about the appearance of a gold-ranked magical plant, python vine. The rest of the journey was peaceful. There were no man-made aquatic magical beasts, nor were there any python vines. The bottom of the river was muddy, and there were often whirlpools on the surface of the river. The banks of the river were unstable and often collapsed. This was a new river channel formed by the cracks on the surface of the island. It was also the best shortcut to the center of the island. The shortcut was not without risk. From time to time, groups of bat monkeys and flying squirrels would attack. With Jinjin, Zonggu, and the others guarding the area, these beasts would either be defeated or become food for the survivors. Almost every survivor had a crossbow, and after several rounds of cruel elimination, those who could survive until now were either elites or lucky enough. It was very difficult to maneuver the new ship. When it first set sail, everyone, including Jinjin, was flustered. The new ship even hit the riverbank because it did not turn in time. Fortunately, it did not break anything. Even so, Jinjin ordered the ship to stay on the riverbank for a day and arranged for everyone to undergo emergency special training. The surviving crew members were of great help, and they used all their skills to control the ship without any mistakes. The ship left the jungle and swam freely in the forest. It left the forest and entered the desert. The air became very hot, and the lava pillars of the volcano eruption became more and more conspicuous. Black snow floated in the air, which was volcanic ash. Because of the hot weather, the glue and asphalt between the boards of the ship began to melt. Water continued to seep from the bottom of the cabin. As the ship left the desert and entered the volcanic area, more and more water seeped out, to the point that Jinjin and the others could not bear it. The river channel gradually narrowed, and when the two sides were almost touching the sides of the new ship, Jinjin led everyone out of the new ship. They moved all the supplies in time. An hour later, without the survivors continuously pouring out of the ship, the new ship completely sank under everyone's gaze. Everyone watched in silence. Jinjin took a deep breath and said in a clear voice, "Now we have no way out. Let's move forward." The journey forward was very difficult. The extremely hot ground made it difficult for people to step on. Every time they breathed, the scorching air almost burned everyone's nasal cavity, trachea, heart, and lungs. The air was filled with a layer of yellow mist. The extremely pungent smell of sulfur made people extremely uncomfortable. The sky was covered by volcanic clouds, and the light was dim. Only when the lava erupted did the vision become clearer. The earthquake had been with the survivors. The closer they got to the center of the island, the greater the scale of the earthquake. When they were sailing, the earthquake set off huge waves. Now that they were walking in groups, the threat of the earthquake became even greater. It would break the ground and cause the magma below to surge out. On the first day they got off the ship, 3 people died because of it. On the second day, the team encountered a giant lava turtle. The giant turtle was in a very strange state. Its eyes were red and it had fallen into madness. It was no longer as gentle and harmless as before. It took the initiative to attack the team. This was a gold-level magical beast. Of course, Zhenjin would not be stupid enough to fight it head-on. He quickly led everyone to escape. Fortunately, the giant turtle was not intelligent enough. Its chasing speed could not keep up with the speed of people desperately escaping. After a distance, it no longer chased after Zhenjin and the others. The team's situation was more than 10 times more dangerous than yesterday, because they encountered the magical beast army. Under the fierce battle of Zhenjin and Zhongguo, the magical beast army blocking the way was defeated. But everyone's mood was very heavy. Because of the 3 blue dog fox wolf, they only had time to kill 2 of them. The other one escaped with the remnants of the defeated team. The blue dog fox wolf had outstanding intelligence. This blue dog fox wolf would definitely attract more magical beast army. Under the advice of Zhongguo, Zhenjin had to take the risk to increase the team's speed. This made the survivors suffer. A few days later, everyone looked up at the volcano in front of them. Many people's eyes were numb. They searched all the way, but did not find any signs of the Mage Tower or the Magic Center. Could the Mage Tower be hidden in the volcano? In fact, this is very likely. The reason why this island is unstable is because of the volcanic eruption. But how do we get in? Lord Zhenjin, we can't do it. Everyone's expression was gloomy. For the past few days, they had been continuously chased by the magical beast army. In this volcanic landscape, there were many blue dog fox wolf. Almost every wolf led a small magical beast army. If Zhenjin and Zhongguo had not fought at the front every time, the team would never have made it here. Zhenjin's face was covered in dust. He was no longer as handsome as before, but his eyes were still unwavering. Let's rest here. We have to think of a way to enter this volcano first, Zhenjin said. Song Su, ZD, and the others looked troubled. The air temperature was very high. Ordinary people had reached the limit of their endurance. If they continued, their lives would be in danger. Only extraordinaires with outstanding physical fitness could get closer. Zhenjin and the others were discussing when their expressions suddenly changed. The magical beast army is attacking. Prepare for battle, Zhenjin said in a low voice. No one doubted Zhenjin's prediction. Along the way, they had relied on Zhenjin's prediction to fight against the magical beast army. Time was limited. They chose a slightly higher slope and formed a formation. Zhenjin and Zhongguo stood at the front. Soon, they saw a large wave of wild beasts and magical beasts rushing toward them. There are too many of them. This is definitely not just one magical beast army. There have to be at least 5 blue dog fox wolf to gather such a terrifying force. Let's run. Zhenjin gritted his teeth and shook his head. Where can we run to? At this moment, his heart was also shrouded in despair. Even if he gave up all his worries and mutated with all his strength, it would be difficult for him to fight against so many beasts. It was simply impossible to protect the lives of ZD and the others under the attack of the magical beast horde. If we had known, we would have stayed in the rainforest and waited for reinforcements. Heiwan shouted. It was too late for regrets. The magical beast army did not care whether they regretted it or not. They directly attacked the formation. Don't keep the iron arrowheads. Use as many as you can, Zhongguo shouted. Zhenjin, Zhongguo, and the others fought with all their might. The formation was actually able to hold against the surging magical beast horde. Strange. The magical beast army this time is a little fake. I haven't seen a single blue dog fox wolf until now. Where did they go? Why do I feel that these magical beasts are not attacking us? Instead, they are fleeing? Yes, look carefully. Many of them are injured. Everyone was puzzled. Zhenjin's expression changed, and he looked into the distance. There were people. He had been using ultrasound to scan his surroundings, but these people were out of his reach. They suddenly appeared in his field of vision. There were a total of 6 strangers. They were easily chasing and killing the magical beasts that covered the mountains and plains. They were actually driving the magical beast army. No wonder the blue dog fox wolf did not appear. They had probably been killed by these people. There were only 6 of them, but they were able to defeat such a huge magical beast army. What attracted Jinjin and Zhongji's attention was that their bodies were shining with a pure white holy light. Their clothes were spotless and did not fit in with the surroundings. They could use supernatural powers. Paladin Jinjin, you are finally here. The middle-aged man in the lead spoke softly. The distance between the two parties was still quite far, but his hoarse voice echoed clearly in everyone's ears. The survivors were shocked and ecstatic. Could it be that reinforcements have arrived? But how could they be deeper than us? This is the Shengming Emperor's priest. Behind him is the guardian knight. You are... Jinjin bowed slightly. The white-clothed priest smiled gently and introduced himself. My name is Yasha. Chapter 157. Scabsha. He was a middle-aged man wearing a priest's white robe. His appearance was ordinary and could even be described as ugly. This was because there was a scar on his face. It started from the left side of his forehead and slid down to the right side of his ear. This hideous scar almost divided his face into 2 parts, the upper right and lower left. It was extremely conspicuous. His hands were empty, but he wore a necklace-like holy emblem on his chest. The necklace pendant was a hollow disc made of platinum, bigger than an adult's palm. The disc was engraved with a circular coil on the edge, and in the middle was a superimposed horizontal and vertical pupil. The horizontal and vertical human-shaped eye sockets were both made of gentle curves, forming a vague cross shape between the horizontal and vertical. The common pupil of the 2 eye sockets was hollow, just like the hollow of the disc. This was the Shengming Emperor's holy emblem. Wearing this holy emblem represented that Father Scabsha was serving the Shengming Emperor. Silver-level life, aura, escaped from Scabsha's body without any concealment. He was an experienced silver-level extraordinary. Jinjin had known about Scabsha for a long time. Long ago, when he and ZD supported each other, he learned about Scabsha's existence from ZD. Jinjin knew that as a temple knight, he was going to the wilderness continent for the 100 Needles family to compete for the position of White Sand City's lord. There were a total of 3 temple knights competing for the position of White Sand City's lord, and the chief examiner was Father Scabsha. The competition was fierce. Originally, the team sent by the 100 Needles family to help Jinjin was probably destroyed by the forces behind these 2 competitors. After ZD and Jin's discussion, they secretly boarded the Pig's Kiss. On one hand, the other 2 competitors had already set off. In order to not let the mastermind succeed, Jinjin and the others had to hurry to prevent delay. On the other hand, Scabsha boarded the Pig's Kiss. If they could build a relationship with the chief examiner, or leave a good impression in advance, it would be of great help in the future competition for the position of lord. After that, there was a shipwreck. After falling to this island, ZD once mentioned to Jinjin, if possible, find Father Sca Sand, help him, and leave a good impression on him. Now, they finally met Father Sca Sha. However, it was not Jinjin and the others who helped the priest, but the priest who helped Jinjin. Temple Knight Jinjin, you finally came. Scab's hoarse voice seemed to echo in Jinjin's ears. After Jinjin finished his salute, he asked with a puzzled expression, Father Sca Sand, thank you for your help. But how did you know I was coming? You seem to have been waiting for me for a long time. Sa stroked the holy emblem on his chest with his right hand and said meaningfully, under the eyes of the great emperor, the future is also traceable. Jin's heart skipped a beat as he recalled a divine technique, extreme vision. The gods were omnipotent, but they each had their own strengths. Every god, according to their clergy, had different achievements in different fields. The Shengming Emperor was the god of victory, the god of light, and one of his special divine techniques was extreme vision. The so-called extreme vision was to surpass the limits of one's vision. What one saw was no longer the level of space, but the level of time. The person who successfully used this divine technique would see the result of the predetermined action. In short, it was a prophecy technique. Father SCA, Sand has mastered the extreme eye technique? Jean Jun was shocked. Scab looked around at everyone. Everyone's state of exhaustion was clear to him. What you need the most now is rest. Follow me. Our temporary camp is not far away. SCA Sand said. Zhen Jin and the others did not refuse. They really needed a rest. However, everyone followed SCA Sand and the others. As soon as they crossed the hillside in front of them, they were shocked on the spot. Many people were aghast as they saw that the ground was littered with the corpses of the demonic beasts. It turned out that the magical beast army that attacked Zhen Jin and the others were really just remnants of a defeated army that was being chased by SCA Sand and the others. The scale of the real army was more than 5 times that of Zhen Jin's, and now they were all corpses. SCA Sand and the others could actually kill so many magical beasts. How did they do it? It's obvious that SCA Sand can use divine techniques. It seems that only low-level magic and Do Chi are prohibited here, but not divine techniques. Strange, Sir SCA Sand scars can obviously be treated with divine techniques. It only needs to treat minor injuries. Why didn't he treat it? This is not the main point. The main point is what he said just now. It's very likely that he mastered extreme vision. What is extreme vision? This kind of divine technique can only be mastered by devout believers. Generally speaking, only the bishops of the sacred church can master it. But SCA Sand is obviously just a priest. So, he is not just a simple priest. His future is not limited to this. We can totally treat him as a prospective bishop. Along the way, the discussion about SCA Sand did not stop. Just as SCA Sand said, the temporary camp was not far away. It was very small and simple. After all, there were only 6 of them. The ground was boiling hot, but in this small camp, they did not feel the slightest bit of heat. This is divine technique, shelter, Zhen Jin secretly said. He had lost most of his memory, but he did not lack common sense. The shelter could create a suitable place for people to rest and recuperate. Everyone, please wait a moment. Father SCA Sand smiled and immediately held the holy emblem on his chest with both hands. He lowered his head and began to pray silently. A moment later, a holy light descended from the sky. After falling to the ground, the pure, white, holy light gradually disappeared, as if it had penetrated the surrounding environment. Many people exclaimed. They felt the sudden change in the environment. In an instant, they returned from the extreme heat to normal. It was still a divine technique shelter, but this time, the range of the divine technique was more than 10 times larger. Of course, this divine technique was not as simple as changing the cold and heat. The allies who rested here would also receive other benefits, such as speeding up the recovery of the body, increasing the effects of sleep, eating, and so on. As for the specific degree of these effects, it usually depended on the strength of the prayer. After temporarily settling everyone, SCA Sand extended his hand to invite Zhen Jin for a chat. Zhen Jin, with mixed feelings, went into the tent. On one hand, he was very uneasy. He pretended to be a divine knight, but in fact he used the core to mutate himself and repeatedly pretended to be the will of God to boost morale. Although his intentions were good, the nature of his actions was extremely bad. On the other hand, Zhen Jin felt that SCA Sand was close and reliable. Zhen Jin and other holy knights fought for God, while priests like SCA Sand preached for God and spread faith. To some extent, SCA Sand was closer to the Shengming Emperor than Zhen Jin. When the holy knights fought, there would be priests, or bishops. In battle, the latter few would use divine techniques, bringing great help to the holy knights. At the same time, compared to ordinary people, the priests of the Shengming sect would treat the holy knights better. This is truly one of our own. Should I tell SCA Sand about the core? In the end, Golden Needle basically told Scab everything that had happened along the way. However, he still kept the hardcore secret. These people are all that I can save. Father, my ability is too limited. Zhenjin was very ashamed. Sca Sand shook his head and gently stroked Zhenjin's shoulder, gently and full of praise. Child, you have done your best and have reached the limit. You have always adhered to the path of the night, bravely and fearlessly, protecting the weak, upholding justice, and tolerating others. Your personal cultivation is only shallow because you and I are people who serve God. Your strength may be weak for the time being, but your spirit is very strong and full of light. Your performance has actually surpassed most of the holy knights. Now, tell me more about the beastification. Former companions suddenly went crazy and completely lost their minds. Even after death, they still retain their beastification characteristics. Sca Sand was obviously very interested in this. Zhenjin's heart thumped. He hid the core, but he did not hide the beastification, because he cannot hide it. Zhenjin had to repeat what he knew as much as he could. If only Father was here, none of us would have been sacrificed because of the beastification. Zhenjin sighed. Sca Sand shook his head slightly and sighed. My ability is limited and I cannot purify them. Your guesses are very interesting and also contain a lot of truth. This island may really be a place of cultivation. Although you are lucky to have survived, you may have been invaded, leaving behind the hidden dangers of the beastification. Zhenjin frowned. Father, are you unable to purify them? Of course not. According to my guess, the owner of this island is a legend. Sir, you know the identity of the owner of this island? Sca Sand nodded. I was not too sure before, but after knowing about the beastification, I can basically be sure. Chapter 158. Hearing that Scab knew the identity of the master of the island, Zhenjin hurriedly asked. For a long time, the mysterious master of the island had been a huge shadow in the hearts of Zhenjin and the others. Scab said, if I tell you the answer, you should all know him. He is one of the top 10 wanted criminals. Zhenjin was shocked. Every organization, every country, and even every continent had countless wanted lists. In the past few hundred years, the bounty guilds of the continents had become closer. They had organized the wanted lists and formed a big list. In this list, the top 10 wanted criminals were almost unchanged and their positions were extremely firm. Because the empires, sects, and even guilds were usually helpless against these 10 wanted criminals. These 10 wanted criminals not only had amazing strength, but they also had amazing specialties. War trafficker, race, goblin, legendary wizard, alchemy grandmaster, 7th on the wanted list. Some information about the defeat suddenly appeared in Zhenjin's mind. Bronze, black iron, silver, gold, sacred domain, legend, god. The war trafficker's cultivation was already at the peak of the world, second only to God. In terms of combat power, the legendary wizard had a wizard tower, forbidden spells, and divine equipment. He had the power to kill God. The war trafficker was not his real name. Very few people knew his original name. The war trafficker was just his nickname. But just like this nickname, he relied on war to make a fortune. The reason he was wanted by many continents was that he secretly provoked wars between the major races and sold firearms for huge profits. Seeing Zhenjin's slightly changed expression, Scab continued, it seems that you have remembered. This should be the war trafficker's Confusion Island. Confusion Island, Zhenjin murmured. He thought of the rumors about the Confusion Island. The war trafficker's headquarters was the Confusion Island. It was said that it was his half-plane, but he did not expect that it was actually located in the main world. Zhenjin frowned slightly. There were two main doubts in his heart. If the Confusion Island is not a half-plane, then why has he been wanted for so many years, but the real location of the island has never been found? There's one more thing, Father. The war dealer is an alchemy grandmaster, and I know he's good at refining military fire. There are all kinds of alchemy arrowheads, arrows, warheads, and so on. There's also his signature explosive dumbbells. But I've never heard of him being an expert in life alchemy. Scab nodded. In fact, in the past few years, the war traffickers seem to have adjusted the direction of alchemy development, gradually moving from alchemy items to the field of life alchemy. His products have already started to appear on the market, but he's using many other names. Zhang Jin's brows relaxed as he came to a realization. Could it be that war creatures have already appeared on the battlefield? SEA smiled and purposely asked, "How did you figure it out?" Zhang Jin lowered his head slightly. "Reverend Father, you mentioned before that you are very interested in the information about beasts. It was also after I repeated this information that you were almost certain of the identity of the master of the island. Obviously, the war creatures have already hooked up with the war traffickers." Scab could not help but look at Jin Jin with an appreciative gaze. "Child, your mind is very sharp." "It's indeed so. There's a lot of information that you can't access, so you can't guess the true identity of the master of the island. In fact, you've actually done well enough to judge the situation of the master of the island from various signs and have the courage to make the final gamble." Then, Scab took the initiative to narrate his experience. "After the shipwreck, 6 apologetic nights, and I landed on this island. The man-made landforms and man-made, magical beasts on the island amazed me. Although low-level magic and do-chi are prohibited on the island, it can't stop divine power. This allowed my strength to remain unaffected. Relying on various divine arts, we explored the island. When we tried to go to the center of the island, we encountered a teleportation. Whenever we approached the volcanic landform in the center of the island, we would be forcibly teleported out. This situation changed more than a month ago. The forced teleportation no longer occurred, and instead, it was blocked by the magical beast army. The deeper we went into the center of the island, the greater the resistance we encountered. Just as you guessed, I was also thinking, is there a problem with the war traffickers? Perhaps there was a backlash from a meditation, or perhaps there was an explosion in the development of a new alchemy item. If there was no problem, why didn't he come solve us? Why did he let this island walk step by step into the abyss of destruction? Just yesterday, when I used the extreme vision divine art to predict the outcome of the battle, I discovered your arrival. I originally wanted to meet with you first, but the magical beast army launched an attack first. Paladin Jinjin, I know that you are the only heir of the 100 Needles family and want to compete for the position of the Lord of White Sand City. However, in front of us is a great opportunity that is even more difficult to come by than the position of the Lord of White Sand City. In the past few hundred years, the top 10 positions on the wanted list have occasionally changed, but the top 10 most wanted criminals have almost never changed. If we can eliminate the 7th war trafficker for the Empire, do you know how great this contribution is? You could be promoted directly to a war zone commander. You will become the master of at least 10 cities, and it is even possible to be promoted to a count. If you don't need the territory of the Wilderness Continent, you can also directly apply to the Imperial family for a territory on the Shengming Continent to restore the glory of the 100 Needles family. Jin Jin muttered to himself in silence. Scab smiled and said, "Of course, we also know how great the risk is. But what can we do? We have no other choice, and this is the only thing left." Zhang Jin asked, "Father, since the divine art is forbidden here, can't we rely on prayer to ask for help from the Shengming Empire?" Scab's face sank. "My lord did not clearly respond to my prayer. According to my guess, the war traffickers have a way to block the perception of the gods. Because of this, the Lost Island can be hidden in the main world and not be seen by the gods. Even the divine art was originally forbidden on this island, but it was damaged for some reason, allowing me to use my divine art. Now, Zhang Jin, tell me your decision." Zhang Jin smiled bitterly, spread out his hands, and said to Scab, "Do I have any other choice? To tell you the truth, this is my last chance to go here, and I have no confidence. It is my honor to be able to fight side by side with Father." "Very good, Temple Knight Zhang Jin." Scab showed a happy expression. "You did not disappoint me. I've seen everything that you've done. If we fail this time, but luckily survive, I will recommend you to be the Lord of White Sand City. Fate was really hard to understand. Jinjin actually did not have much hope for the position of the Lord of White Sand City, because he had been delayed for too long. But he did not expect that he would win an excellent opportunity. Who told Scab, the examiner, to also be stranded on this island? After returning, Jinjin told this news to ZD, and ZD was also very happy. From their point of view, they were originally going to make a final gamble, and meeting up with Scab and the others was equivalent to gaining a strong ally. Divine Art, Water Creation Technique. Scab held the holy emblem in his hand and prayed. Holy light descended, and the bowls, water bags, and pots placed together produced clear water out of thin air. Divine Art, Food Creation Technique. Holy light descended again, and a large amount of dry food appeared on the canvas, spread on the ground. Divine Art, Restoration Technique. Holy light swept through everyone's clothes and equipment and achieved a small degree of restoration in an instant. Divine Art, Elemental Endurance. Holy light descended one after another, and everyone was bathed in the holy light, receiving blessings. Now, even if they left the shelter, everyone did not feel bad about the extreme heat of the outside world. Gods were omnipotent, and their divine arts were naturally all-encompassing. As long as divine arts were not prohibited, Scab was an all-around logistics master. It is best not to eat the magic beast meat, and do not drink the water on this island for the time being. I will provide the food and drink. Scab smiled. Everyone hurriedly thanked him. Because their companions had become beasts, these people were wary of the magic beast meat and the collected water. Scab was immediately recognized and welcomed. After leaving the shelter, everyone was quickly attacked by the magical beast army. According to Scab, the blue dog fox wolf on this island, as well as the wild beasts and magic beasts, had gathered or were gathering here. Their purpose was to protect the war traffickers and stop all outsiders. However, no matter how many magic beasts blocked the way, they could not stop Scab, Jinjin, and the others. Divine Art, Blessing Technique. Divine Art, Fear Technique. Divine Art, Calm the Mind. Divine Art, Tenacity Technique. Divine Art, Flash Technique. Divine Art, Hold Technique. Divine Art, Invisibility Technique. Divine Art, Extreme Vision Technique. The Blessing spell greatly increased the attack power of Jinjun and the others. The Panic spell made the magical beast army panic, calmed their minds, and stabilized their morale. The Tenacity spell was comparable to the Iron families. The Flash spell made the magical beasts blind, and the Immobilization spell made them stand in place and watch as they were easily slaughtered by humans. Invisibility Technique made Jinjin and the others invisible, making it easier to execute the decapitation tactic. Extreme Vision Technique allowed people to see the results of their own actions and make timely and accurate adjustments. Scab's existence changed the entire battle situation. Silver Level was usually the lord of a city or the head of a small or medium-sized organization. Sandow was the leader of a mercenary group, but his cultivation was only at the Black Iron level. After a battle, Scab could also use healing and detoxification techniques. The 5 apologetic knights were also independent and were all at the Black Iron level. There was a difference between the apologetic knights and the Holy Knights. The Holy Knights were the exclusive army of the Shengming Emperor, and only the Shengming Emperor had them. The apologetic knights were widely selected and were the regular establishment of the major sections. The 5 apologetic knights had solid martial skills and profound battle experience. Originally, they had a total of 6 people, but when they first entered the island, one of them was sacrificed. Scab also took the initiative to preside over the daily prayers and confessions. With him around, the morale would almost never collapse. After a week of this, everyone cut through the thistles and thorns and finally arrived at the foot of the largest volcano. Divine Art, Detection Mechanism. Divine Art, Detection Technique. It's really here. Scab's face was filled with joy. Divine Art, Teleportation Gate. Everyone entered the teleportation gate and arrived underground. They were in the middle of a huge square. Looks like this is the underground alchemy factory of the war traffickers. Scab was the last to enter and looked around. Chapter 159. This was a huge square. Just by looking at it, it was at least 400 meters long and 300 meters wide. Based on the height of the big guy standing there, it was about 4 meters. The ground was very smooth. It was not paved with tiles, but a whole piece of white metal. Not only the ground, but the walls and ceiling were also made of this metal. On the ceiling, there was also a blue light source. In the square, there were also boxes of various sizes. The big box was bigger than the lava giant turtle. The smallest box was 3 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 1 meter high. The box looked like it was made of iron, but it was actually made of ironwood. Jean looked at the surface of the box and immediately thought of when he had just woken up and failed to break a tree branch by the river. At that time, the tree branch was made of ironwood. The surface of the box made of ironwood was also painted with red paint, depicting letters and numbers. For example, EM 096, SG 734, ID 5D, VR 862, and so on. After confirming that there were no enemies in the square, SCA held the holy emblem on his chest and began to pray silently. After a few breaths, holy light descended. Divine spell, detect traps. There were no traps around. Divine spell, detect magic. In an instant, within the detection range, almost all the boxes lit up with a brilliant light. This proved that almost all of them contained items related to magic. Divine spell, detect traps. Just like the previous detection of traps, there were no detections. After a round of detection, SCA's face was filled with joy and ordered, "Open these boxes." The first small box was opened. What greeted everyone's eyes was a layer of withered yellow and fluffy straw. When the straw was taken out, everyone saw bundles of arrows. These arrows were dark red, and the surface looked like rusty metal. Someone tried to pick one up, but found that it was very light, lighter than an egg. These are alchemy arrows, flame arrows. ZD's eyes lit up as she recognized them. Bang, bang, bang. One by one, the small wooden boxes were pried open. Almost all of them were alchemy arrows. Flame arrows were the majority. In addition, there were frost arrows, torrential arrows, wind needle arrows, smoke arrows, slow arrows, flash arrows, and so on. There were many types, and the number was astonishing. Many people swallowed their saliva. They had never seen such an astonishing scene. The cost of alchemy arrows was not cheap. It was rare to see them packed in boxes like this. "Can we use these arrows?" Sandow was moved. He reached out and caressed the arrow shafts, as if he was caressing the skin of his lover. On the other hand, Jean, Zonggu, and the apologetic knights looked indifferent. As the leader of a mercenary group, Sandow's financial resources had always been limited. He rarely used such expensive consumable weapons. However, whether it was Jean, Zonggu, or the apologetic knights, these alchemy arrows were their daily equipment. Moreover, the quality would only be better, not worse. After all, it was provided by the official channel of the Shengming Empire. ZD picked up a few arrows and examined them carefully. After a while, she shook her head in disappointment. The magic circles on these arrows are only sub-magic circles. They need to be combined with the main magic circle in order to bring out the real power of the alchemy arrows. Otherwise, they are not as good as our self-made wooden arrows. Sandow wasn't disappointed. Instead, he looked at the unopened boxes around him with even more excitement. There should be crossbows in here. The former mercenary group leader couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. Thus, everyone's enthusiasm to open the boxes became even higher. More and more boxes were opened. This time, they found the most arrowheads and warheads. Most of the arrowheads were triangular, a few were spindle-shaped, and some even had barbs. The arrowheads were of different colors. They were made of crystal, but not transparent. These arrowheads can be used. As long as the impact force reaches a certain level, it will work. Zongus said. As a former general, the orc had been in the army for many years. He was familiar with some common equipment. Then there were the warheads. These warheads were all round. The small ones were about the size of an adult's finger. The big ones were 2 or 3 times the size of a small ball. These were flintlock bullets. The various sizes were all the popular flintlocks on the market. The warheads were the same as the arrowheads. They only needed the impact force to reach a certain level. However, no one had a flintlock gun in their hands. After opening a box that was taller than a person, they found that the small boxes were neatly arranged inside. What is this? After opening the small box, someone took out a dumbbell. The dumbbell seemed to be made of glass. There was a liquid stored inside. Half of it seemed to be yellow oil, and the other half seemed to be red water. The strange thing was that the oil and water were clearly separated and did not mix with each other. Quickly put down gently. Don't shake it. Haywan's expression changed, and his voice trembled slightly. Many people followed the sound and gathered. Zhong Ji's eyes narrowed slightly. Explosive dumbbell, rocking music. Sandao said the nickname of this weapon. The number of explosive dumbbells was very large. Basically, this kind of box was stored in this kind of shape. It seems that this is indeed the alchemy factory of the war traffickers. Scab confirmed again. This weapon was the signature product of the war traffickers. After shaking it violently, the two liquids would mix together and explode within a certain period of time. The oil fire produced by the explosion would adhere to the surface of the target and burn intensely for a period of time. The temperature of the burning was 10 times higher than ordinary flames. This kind of throwable weapon was very famous. The mercenaries at the bottom jokingly called it rocking music. It was so happy that it could meet the Grim Reaper. Ah, we finally found it. After a moment, Sandao laughed loudly. It finally found alchemy crossbows in the larger box. But soon, Sandao's smile disappeared, and his face revealed a worried expression. Because the underground factory was still anti-magic, these crossbows could not be used. There are guns here. A large number of flintlock guns were alchemy products. But like the crossbows, they were low-level alchemy tools. They were limited by the environment and had no effect. These bullets seemed to be made of bones. In the case of the flintlock, they also found a long, twisted, bone-like bullet of a peculiar kind. When Scab saw this, his face suddenly sank. ZD was also bewildered. Wraith bullet? Isn't this the signature product of Black Braid? This kind of bullet had only been on the market for more than 100 years, and it became more and more popular. It used the power of necromancy. Every year, the upper echelons of the empire died under these bullets. It was not only the Sacred Empire, but also the other continents. Necromancy was a magic school that had risen in the last few hundred years. It was strange and fierce, and traditional defensive methods had little effect on it. As long as a necromancer was exposed, they would become wanted criminals, and everyone would want to beat them. The person who created this magic school was called Yukan. His race was unknown. Some people said that he was once a great shaman among the beastmen. Some said that he was once a blasphemous priest who stole the divine power of many gods. His biggest identity was the necromancer ancestor. He was currently 6th on the wanted list, one place higher than the war traffickers. Black Braid was a new arms dealer that had emerged in the last 100 years. She was a night elf. Why would her signature product appear here? ZD was puzzled. Scab sneered. It's very simple. Black Braid is just a fake identity of the war traffickers. There are not many wooden boxes left. People finally made a move on the big boxes. Let's see what's hidden inside. Wow, what a big and thick guy. Muban whistled. It was an alchemy cannon. The pitch-black body of the cannon was engraved with golden lines, giving people a feeling of toughness and tyranny. Below the cannon was a silver-white base, forming a turret. This is a gold-grade alchemy cannon. ZD's eyes lit up, her face showing joy. This meant that this alchemy cannon was very likely to be used in the current environment. There's a set of cannonballs inside. Someone exclaimed. There was another discovery. The spherical cannonballs seemed to be solid bullets, but the colors were different. The similarity was that the surface of the cannonballs depicted a roaring dragon head. "This is Big Bang's Dragon Howl bullet," ZD whispered. Big Bang was a giant, and also a new arms dealer that had emerged in the last 100 years. Dragon Howl bullet was his signature product. Everyone's heart sank. This meant that Big Bang, a new arms dealer who had risen to fame, was very likely another identity of a war trafficker. Do. Just as people pulled out the alchemy cannon, the whole square rang with a sharp alarm. At the same time, the blue light on the ceiling turned into a constantly flashing red light. Warning! Warning! Intruders in the warehouse! Intruders in the warehouse! A mechanical voice resounded throughout the square. Everyone's expression changed. Tower Genie! Scab's face was ashen. This underground alchemy factory is most likely the war trafficker's wizard tower. Get ready, we're about to fight. Chapter 160. The red light flickered continuously above their heads, reflecting on everyone's tense and dignified faces. Gods were very rare, and the legendary level was already the peak of the world. If they were in charge of mundane affairs, they were usually the leader of a large country, the leader of a powerful alliance, the leader of school, and so on. Silver-level extraordinaires, such as Zongu and Scab, were often the lords of a city or the leader of a medium-sized organization. Comparing the two, the huge gap was obvious at a glance. Legendary figures were usually only heard of in rumors. Even if they did not personally experience it, everyone could fully feel the power of the war traffickers by looking at the alchemy fire in the large and small wooden boxes. With one shot from the gold-level cannon, everyone would be finished. Taking any box of alchemy arrows, only 1/10 of the arrows would be needed to shoot all at once. In the anti-magic environment, the survivors would be easily destroyed. Quick! Put all the arrowheads that can be fitted. The apologetic knights shouted loudly. With them, Zongu, the half-orc, would not be the one to command. Complete alchemy arrows and crossbows were not as good as ordinary crossbows in the anti-magic environment. The same was true for alchemy flintlocks. Without the infusion of magic or chi, they could not fire bullets. Everyone took the alchemy arrowheads and put them on their arrow shafts. It was very regrettable that there was no armor or shield in these boxes. Whether it was the war traffickers, the black braids, or the large-scale firearms products, they did not involve much in armor. The big guy tried his best to drag out the cannon, but the golden cannon did not move. The injuries on his legs had been treated a few days ago. Scab would cast divine spells on the big guy every day to heal serious injuries and regenerate broken limbs. The big guy got rid of the bitter and difficult situation of crawling with his hands, but his physical strength was still relatively weak. The cannon was too heavy. In the end, Zongu, Zhenjin, and the big guy worked together to drag the golden cannon out and point the muzzle at the door. After everyone formed a formation, they were ready for battle. In the end, after a long time, there was still the sound of the alarm and the red flash above their heads. There was no movement at the door. Just as we guessed before, there must be a problem with the war traffickers. It seems that his situation is very bad. Even the alchemy factory has no defensive power. Don't be careless. Perhaps they are gathering. Perhaps there is an army behind the door. Jia Sha, Zhenjin, and the others were discussing. After waiting for a while, the enemy still did not appear. Divine art, detection magic. Divine art, detection magic. Divine spell, detection magic. Scab used 3 divine spells in a row, but he still couldn't detect what was behind the door. No, he sighed. This gate is part of the alchemy factory. My detection magic is only at the silver level. I can't find any useful information. According to his speculations, the alchemy factory was the wizard tower of the warlords. A legendary wizard tower was of a very high level. They were able to detect the goods in the wooden boxes because the alchemy munitions were not part of the alchemy factory. Everyone was armed to the teeth. The arrowheads were replaced with alchemy arrowheads. and each of them was equipped with at least 3 explosive dumbbells. Zhonggu and the others were allocated even more. Heiwan was worried because explosive dumbbells were expendable throwing weapons. It was easy to accidentally injure allies or even oneself. After waiting for a long time, no enemy appeared. They couldn't go on like this. It was impossible for everyone to be tense all the time. Maintaining this state for a long time was a huge drain on one's physical and mental strength. If that's the case, let's fight. Zhen Jin's suggestion was unanimously approved. First, they had to destroy the tightly shut gate in front of them. Everyone first used the set of alchemy arrowheads to design the arrowheads. After a series of small explosions, the gate was intact, except for a layer of grayish-black on the surface. I'm going to throw the explosive dumbbells. Zhonggu reminded. Everyone cautiously retreated. Zhonggu held a dumbbell in his hand, shook it up and down crazily, and then threw it out fiercely. The dumbbell hit the gate, and suddenly there was a loud bang, followed by a raging flame. The boiling hot air constantly hit everyone's cheeks, and they retreated again. Most of them were shocked, as it was the first time they saw the power of the explosive dumbbells. Even Zhonggu, Heiwan, and the others were a little surprised. A guardian knight looked at his explosive dumbbells again and said, "These explosive dumbbells are much more powerful than I remember. They should be new and improved versions." However, after the flames subsided, the gate was still intact. "It seems that we can only use the alchemy cannon." Zhen Jin gritted his teeth. Everyone's face was solemn. Using the cannon in this enclosed underground space was a very dangerous thing to do. If the power was too great, it would lead to a collapse, and it would be difficult for everyone to survive. And if the gate was not blown up, the small space would be affected by the violent explosion and burning, and the losses would be disastrous. But other than that, there was no other way. Although Scab could fully unleash his power, the power of his offensive divine spells was limited. He could do nothing to the gate. Everyone retreated again, and Scab controlled the alchemy cannon. The activation of the alchemy cannon required the infusion of magic or chi, and everyone was restricted by the environment. Scab could only guide his divine power and substitute it. When the divine power was infused to a certain extent, the alchemy cannon began to emit a strong aura, and the surface was covered with a layer of light. The cannon's ammunition was taken out and placed at the tail of the cannon. Solid bullets, chain bullets, great bullets. It seems that this alchemy cannon is a ship's cannon. Who ordered the goods? To be able to use this level of cannon, the ship is definitely not simple. Song Su sighed. There were many types of cannonballs, and it was difficult to choose which one to use. The charging process of the alchemy cannon did not need to be continuous, so Scab stopped the charging and used his divine spell to identify the cannonballs. The cannonballs were also of the gold level, but they were hindered by Scab's silver level. After several rounds of visual inspection, he was able to get some information. After more than 10 rounds of visual inspection, Scab chose a cannonball with a green dragon head mark. The big guy moved the cannonball from the tail of the cannon to the body of the cannon. Scab used extreme vision to predict the outcome of the cannon attack. The result made him very satisfied. After a while, he finally finished charging. He was so tired that he wanted to die. Generally speaking, if one controlled the alchemy cannon alone, it would be presided over by a gold-level extraordinary person. Even if it was not possible, several silver-level experts would have to work together. If the alchemy cannon was installed on a ship, the usual charging would be provided by the magic energy pool or the magic energy furnace on the ship. Now it was all up to Scab alone, almost squeezing him dry. "My condition is not good. If the door is broken and a fight breaks out, I basically have no way to provide any support to everyone. Let's rest for the night." Scab panted. No one had the slightest objection. Scab's existence was too crucial. Without him, even if Zhen Jin completely mutated, they would not be able to break through the magical beast army's blockade. Next, they would have to deal with the war traffickers, and it would be even more impossible without Scab. Although he was extremely tired, Scab still managed to preside over everyone's prayer before falling asleep. There was a difference between extraordinary people like priests, and mages and fighters. In essence, the power of a priest was borrowed from God, not their own power. But priests did not have no self-cultivation. Their daily practice was to pray, to offer their faith to God, to prove their devotion. God lent them divine power according to the level of devotion of each cult member. Continuously bathing in divine power and using it, the physical fitness of priests, bishops, and so on would be improved correspondingly. From God's point of view, how to lend divine power was to create a receiver. The more devout the priest, the better their physical fitness, and the more divine power the God could release to him. Scab prayed before going to sleep, fell asleep, and prayed again after waking up, completely recovering his strength. Scab activated the alchemy cannon, and with a dragon's roar, the cannonball shot out. After shooting at the door, there was only a muffled sound, and then a large amount of thick green liquid splashed out. Everyone had already retreated to the back and was not affected by the green liquid. The green liquid corroded the door, quickly melting a small hole. Within a dozen breaths, the small hole rapidly expanded, becoming the size of one person, two people, and finally a big hole that even a big person could pass through. Everyone cheered, all thanks to Scab. There were no enemies behind the door, and there was a long passage. The four walls of the passage were made of metal, and like the warehouse before, they were all made of white metal. At the same time, the ceiling was still flickering with red light. Divine art, detection magic. Divine art, trap detection. Divine art, mechanism detection. Everyone moved forward, and Scab used these three divine arts one after another, but the results were minimal. Not finding anything doesn't mean there isn't anything. This is the alchemy factory of the war traffickers. Scab sighed helplessly. The atmosphere of the team was somewhat heavy, and it seemed that they could only use human lives to explore a safe route. Wait a moment. Maybe we can use these ironwood boxes. Sindao suddenly said, think about it. This passage will obviously have a large amount of goods passing through. The mechanism traps won't attack these goods, right? This was a good idea. Soon, an ironwood box was brought over. Divine art, heaven's messenger. A small light door appeared, and a pure white bird drilled out of the door, its appearance similar to a pigeon. Scab stuffed the pigeon into the wooden box, and the big guy kicked it hard, and the whole wooden box slid far away on the smooth metal floor without any problems. Scab ordered with his mind, and the pigeon opened the lid of the wooden box and flew back. Before it flew 100 meters, suddenly from the ground, both sides and the cave walls above, countless spears suddenly appeared. With a clanging sound, the bird was stabbed to death, and platinum blood spilled all over the ground. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. Warning! Warning! Intruders in the cargo passage. Intruders. The voice of the tower, Genie, sounded again. Mobilize the garrison golems. Eliminate the intruders. Everyone's heart suddenly rose. But the next moment, the tower Genie said, no garrison golems detected, urgently mobilizing the transport golems. Everyone's heart was just relieved, but it rose again. No transport golems detected. 3 abandoned golems detected. Emergency repair. Emergency repair successful. 1 abandoned golem dispatched. Then, everyone saw a square opening in the ground, and a platform rose from it. On the platform stood a human-shaped golem with iron skin. This golem was about the height of an adult, with a head like an inverted pot lid, crystal eyes emitting a red light, and 2 arms. One was a large wrench, and the other was a spiral head. The abandoned golem immediately rushed to kill everyone. Fire. Almost in the next moment, a large number of arrows flew out. Frost, flames, acid, and electric sparks covered the abandoned golem. But the golem pressed forward and quickly rushed through the passage. Everyone kept retreating, and Zhonggu threw the explosive dumbbell again. He had received throwing training, and his throwing was very accurate. After the explosion, the abandoned golem stopped for the first time, and flames burned all over its body. However, just as everyone was about to cheer, it moved again and rushed to everyone. Everyone's faces were ugly. Zhenjin's mood was also very heavy. This is just an abandoned golem. I'm afraid I'll have to completely mutate to fight it. But can I do that? Zhenjin was very worried. Now Scab was by his side. As the priest of the Shengming Emperor, he was not so easy to deceive. Once Zhenjin mutated, even if it was only a limited mutation, if Scab saw through it, how could Zhenjin explain it? Chapter 161. Bang! The great white bone hammer smashed into the front of the abandoned golem. The abandoned golem finally could not hold on any longer. The upper body, which was already full of cracks, was smashed into pieces. However, there was still a lower body left, remaining in place. With every breath, the legs made of black iron twitched, accompanied by sparks. We finally defeated it. After a moment, Zhonggu confirmed that the abandoned golem was no longer a threat. Only then did he exhale a mouthful of turbid air. A mere transport golem is so powerful. It's mainly because we can't use battle energy. If we did, Sir Zhonggu alone would be enough to deal with it. Next time, be more careful when using explosive arrowheads. Don't use them in narrow places. I almost couldn't breathe just now. Everyone looked at the remaining parts of the golem and discussed animatedly, their faces solemn. Scab was only a priest, after all, and was not good at close combat. Although he would also bless the warriors in front with shields, it was not as solid as battle energy. 5 black iron rank apologetic knights attacked together, but they could not stop the charge of the abandoned golem. In the end, it was Zhenjin and Zhonggu who forcibly resisted because they were stronger. Although they won, everyone's hearts were shrouded in a haze. They heard the words of the tower spirit very clearly. It was just a golem used for transport, and after being abandoned, it was repaired urgently. It was actually so powerful that it forced everyone to retreat to the warehouse. If this was a garrison golem or some other conventional defensive force, what would the result of the battle be? Continue forward. Other than continuing forward, we have nowhere else to go. And the enemy can't even send a regular golem, which proves that this place is already extremely empty. The tower spirit seems to have suffered a heavy blow, and its mind is in a mess. When we first came in, we even opened all the alchemy fire, but it did not respond. Just now, it casually broadcasted, letting us know that the garrison golems do not exist, and that an abandoned golem was repaired. I can already see the dawn of victory. My lord is the god of light, the god of victory. He will definitely guide us to victory. SCA San shouted loudly. Everyone's morale stabilized and did not continue to fall. Without the obstruction of the abandoned magic statues, the rest of the corridor was unimpeded. Following San Dao's suggestion, everyone entered the wooden box. The wooden boxes were pushed by Big Guy, Zhonggu, and the others. They pushed the lighter people to the other side of the aisle. The wooden boxes carried the members and cleverly avoided the traps. Something's wrong with the tower genie. This alchemy factory shouldn't be so easy for us to exploit. Hurry up, we have to hurry. Dad, don't leave me behind. The big guy's face was bitter as he approached Jinjin. Seeing that there were fewer and fewer people around him, his face was filled with worry and fear. The height of the passageway was suitable for ordinary people, but for big people, it was relatively short. He could only lower his head and bend his waist. Jinjin patted the big guy's thigh. Don't worry, I won't leave you behind. In the end, we will leave together. The big guy was still a little worried, so he stuck close to Jinjin. In the end, even the alchemy cannon was dragged over. Jinjin and the big guy entered the ironwood box together. On the opposite side, Zhonggu, the 5 apologetic knights, and the others pulled the hemp rope with all their strength. The ironwood box, carrying Jinjin, and the big guy was gradually pulled through the passage. After passing through this passage, 3 forks appeared in front of them. Don't worry, let me check it out. Scab began to use the extreme eye technique. He first led the 5 apologetic knights and chose the leftmost passage. The extreme eye technique showed a blood-red color. If I take this passage, I will be seriously injured. Scab suddenly understood. He then walked to the middle passage with the apologetic knights. Under the extreme eye technique, their vision was gray and then turned into complete darkness. Scab's heart trembled. If I take this path, I will die. Following the same pattern, Scab checked the third passage. It seems that there will be a fierce battle, but the apologetic knights and I are fine. Without any hesitation, Scab chose the third path. Even if there was a problem with the war traffickers and the tower genie, the legendary alchemy factory was still a tiger's den. The extreme eye technique became extremely crucial. Without Scab's guidance, Zhenjin and the others would easily be wiped out if they were to rush in. In this way, everyone gradually went deeper into the alchemy factory. Sometimes there would be a fierce battle, and sometimes there would be traps or mechanisms that would kill 2 or 3 people. As the survivors got closer to the core of the alchemy factory, the battle became more and more difficult. The apologetic knights were all injured, and the members brought by Zhenjin were also reduced by more than a dozen people. If it weren't for Scab's divine healing, half of the people would have died because of their injuries. And those who were injured but did not die would be a great burden to their companions. 2 days, 3 days. Although they could not see the sun, Scab had divine healing to calculate the time. Zhenjin's worry became more and more intense. There were a few times when he almost mutated, and the intensity of the battle forced him to activate his blood core. Zhenjin fell into hesitation. His mutation might be able to hide it from everyone, but it would be difficult to hide it from Scab. What if I use the opportunity of confession to confess in advance? This way, I won't have to be restrained in battle. But will Scab understand me? Will he forgive me? Should I trust him? But if this goes on, it will be really dangerous. If I'm too overcautious and don't use the heart core, it will cause me unbearable losses. This is too pedantic and stupid. There were a few times when Zhenjin wanted to confess to Scab and explain the ins and outs of the heart core clearly. But in the end, he gave up, just like how he could not muster the courage to speak to ZD. So I'm still afraid. There's a large part of my heart that's weak. Zhenjin smiled bitterly. In front of them was another fork, but there were 5 passages. After using the extreme eye technique 8 times, Scab gritted his teeth and pointed at the passage in the middle. Go this way. These days, he became more and more haggard. The closer they got to the core of the alchemy factory, the pressure swelled like a huge rock, heavily pressing on Scab's heart. He could clearly feel that the effect of the extreme eye technique was being suppressed. The closer they got to the core, the more obvious the suppression was. He could foresee less and less, so he had to use this technique more often. This greatly increased his burden, forcing him to rest and recuperate more frequently. Maybe this decision is wrong. No matter how bad the war traffickers are, they're not something that people like me can deal with. Scab felt as if he was walking on a cliff. If he was not careful, he would be buried in the abyss. But this kind of wavering was fleeting. Soon, the confusion in his eyes disappeared, and they were filled with burning passion again. No, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I give up, if I shrink back, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Riches and honor are hidden in infinite risk. If I take down the war traffickers this time, the credit I get will let me be promoted to a bishop. No, it's even possible for me to be a cardinal. At that time, I will be instilled with divine power, and I will become a gold or even a saint. I will master even more powerful divine techniques. I will go back, stand in front of Bishop Ping, and watch him take the initiative to salute me. Then I will smile and ask him, "Now, do you think you are right, or I am right?" "Sirs, I have an amazing discovery." Sandow, as a scout, returned from his reconnaissance, interrupting Scab's thoughts. Because the Supreme I was limited, the survivors began to send elites to explore and scout ahead yesterday. After a while, everyone passed through the passage and came to a broken door. This place has been destroyed. It was broken through forcefully. What fierce fighting energy! But fighting energy and magic are forbidden here. At most, it is forbidden for low-level magic. Looking at these traces, the fighting energy is at least gold. It's a saint. Scab opened his eyes. He used divine techniques to investigate and got the answer. At least 3 saints broke through here. Obviously, these saints should be the enemies of the war traffickers. Who were they? Which side did they come from? Why were they enemies with the war traffickers? The answers to these questions were all unknown. Behind the door was a production workshop. It should be a place where alchemy arrows are produced. Sandow voiced his guess. Be careful, there is a defensive force inside. Everyone stood at the broken door. Through Sandow's guidance, they saw several small ballistas in the corner of the workshop. These ballistas had bases and seemed to be able to rotate quickly. In the heavily damaged workshop, there was a large amount of alchemy machinery wreckage. Some were worker golems, and some were garrison golems. They were all blown to pieces. In the ruins of the battlefield, if one looked carefully, they could see small fragments of alchemy arrows. Everyone suddenly had a guess in their hearts. At least 3 saints had broken through the door. In the workshop, there was a fierce battle with a large number of garrison golems and worker golems. The ballistas were also constantly shooting. But in the end, the saint-level team wiped out almost all of the garrison forces here and left. The reason why he left these ballistas was because he did not care at all. Have you been in? Scab asked Sandow. Sandow shook his head. No, I have not. I have no way to activate my chi to protect myself. Facing alchemy arrows, it is too dangerous. A safe choice. Scab nodded. I will cast a shield for you. I refuse. Before Scab could finish, he was interrupted by Sandow. Scab was stunned. I am injured. Sandow opened his shirt, revealing the wound on his abdomen. The wound has not healed, and it is slowing down my speed. These ballistas may not be able to do anything to saints, but I'm not confident that I can escape unscathed. Scab smiled slightly. It is my negligence. I will heal you now. Alas, I'm only a priest after all, not a bishop. The consumption of divine power is too great, and the divine arts I can use every day are limited. Sandow also smiled. I completely understand you, Sir Priest. So, you see, these 5 apologetic knights have always been in good condition. They're also black iron cultivators. Letting them go is the most suitable. I agree. Zongo added. The smile on Scab's face gradually disappeared. Chapter 162. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 4th day since the survivors came to the underground alchemy factory. This strange mage tower covered a very large area. In the past 4 days, the survivors' journey was not long. Every time they reached a fork, they needed divine spells to determine the correct path. Every passage needed to be identified, whether there were traps, mechanisms, and so on. All of this depended on Scab alone. This was quite a burden for Scab. Every time he was not in good condition, he could only take the initiative to rest. Without shields, blessings, and other divine spells, it was difficult to compete with a transport golem with their flesh and blood. The closer they were to the center of the alchemy factory, the more difficult it was to move forward. Attrition was inevitable. The ones who lost the most were the former members of Sandow's mercenary group. This was normal in Scab's eyes. This was the treatment of mixed bloods. Even when using divine spells to heal, he was biased towards Zhenjin and the pure-blooded humans. Of course, it was also true that Scab's divine spells and divine power were limited. However, Sandow was not satisfied with this, and so was Zhongge. Scab saw that he could not command the 3, and his smile disappeared. He quietly looked at Sandow and Zhongge, releasing an invisible pressure. However, Zhongge and Sandow were not afraid at all. They looked at Father Scab without wavering. The apologetic knights' faces became serious, and some of them slightly tightened their grip on their weapons. It was the first time they had seen such a small ballista in the production workshop. They were completely unaware of its firing speed and the power of the alchemy arrows. Also, hidden among the wreckage, Were there any golems that could launch attacks? These all needed to be tested clearly. And this kind of cannon fodder work had always been done by people like Zhonggu and Sandao. This was very normal. Many lords would also hire mercenary groups to be used as cannon fodder when they fought. However, as the parties involved, Sandao and Zhonggu were, of course, unwilling. The scene was deadlocked, and the atmosphere was subtle. Scab turned his gaze to Jinjin. Jinjin smiled. Let's use the heavenly messenger. Scab was expressionless, but the rest of the apologetic knights frowned. The heaven realm messenger was shaped like a bird. It was not a magic creation, but a real bird that lived in the heaven realm. Scab's summoning technique, strictly speaking, was an otherworldly summoning technique. It summoned things from another world into the main world. Since entering the alchemy factory, this kind of probing investigation was mostly done by the heaven realm messengers. However, the more these messengers were sacrificed, the more disadvantageous it would be for Scab. In the next moment, Father Scab looked deeply at Jinjin and revealed a distressed expression. He sighed and said, "The more heavenly messengers are sacrificed, the harder it is to get a response when I summon them again. At the same time, the consumption of divine power is also greater. Now, the amount of divine power needed to cast the Heavenly Realm Messenger Divine spell was almost the same as the Supreme I spell. It's not worth it. The more divine power I consume, the more frequent I have to rest. This will greatly delay our progress. It's already the 4th day. Perhaps the war trafficker is recuperating, and all the obstacles we encountered along the way were just to buy time for him to heal himself. Naturally, the faster we attack, the better." However, Jinjin shook his head. His attitude was firm, even if he was facing a priest of the same faith. "We're on the same boat. We're in trouble together. We're all comrades. Every life is precious. We should try our best to preserve our lives. If we fight with the war trafficker in the future, every combat power is very important." Zhonggu, Sandao, and the others all looked over. Jinjin was still on their side, which was really unexpected. Scab was slightly stunned. Then his expression eased and he smiled. "What you said makes sense. Maybe I'm under too much pressure, which have caused a certain degree of misunderstanding. If that's the case, then let's continue using the Heaven Realm Messenger to probe." "Wait a moment, everyone." At this time, ZD suddenly spoke. She pointed at the ceiling of the workshop. "Look at that place. Isn't there a magic circle for investigation?" Everyone looked over with rapt attention. The ceiling had been damaged, not deliberately, but by the aftermath of the battle. The broken ceiling revealed various lines that outlined the magic circle. Scab shook his head. "I don't know much about magic circles." He was a priest. He only needed to pray, prove his piety, and contribute to the church and God to obtain power. In comparison, although ZD was only at the black iron level, her knowledge about magic circles was above Scab's. ZD continued, "I've seen this magic circle before. If the circle is intact and activated, it will provide true sight. It can break stealth, camouflage, and other means." At this point, Jinjin, Scab, Songsu, Zhonggu, and the others could not help but reveal a thoughtful expression. ZD said, "Since the war trafficker designed and arranged such a magic circle, and it's hidden on the ceiling, if it's not destroyed, it's impossible to find it from the outside. This meant that the production workshop needed it. I think that whether it's the small ballista or these golems, they all need true sight. Otherwise, they won't be able to find the disguised enemy." "Very good discovery, Miss ZD. I can use invisibility to try." Scab nodded. "Divine art, heavenly messenger. Divine art, invisibility." Silver-level invisibility was not simply visual invisibility. It also involved olfactory invisibility, tactile invisibility, and other aspects. After using invisibility, the heavenly messenger flew around the workshop and returned safely. "Now, we need a few warriors to enter the workshop. Through my invisibility, we can approach the ballista and destroy them." Scab said. There was a short silence. If they used invisibility, They could not use a shield to protect their body. If the ballista shot came, they would almost certainly die. Sandow and the others stood in place and did not move. Obviously, they were unwilling. "Shisuo, you do it," Scab suddenly said. Shisuo froze for a moment, revealing a difficult expression. However, under SCA's gaze, he still nodded his head and agreed. Scab smiled. He looked around with a deep gaze and finally stopped at Shisuo. "Mr. Shisuo, your contributions will not be buried. I believe you need these." Shisuo nodded. "I understand, Father. There are a total of 4, and we need 3 more people. We will send 2 from our side, Xiongdun and Chaija." Scab opened his mouth, and 2 apologetic knights came out. Xiongdun was tall and sturdy, even taller than Zhonggu. He held a heavy shield that was half the height of a person. Chaija was a middle-aged man with a hooked nose. His weapon was a 2-handed greatsword. "We need 1 last warrior," Scab said loudly. "Can I?" "Reverend Father," Baya volunteered. Scab looked at Baya and nodded gently. "Of course, brave young man. Obviously, you have a knightly spirit." After the 4 candidates were confirmed, Scab cast an invisibility spell on them. The others stayed outside the door and stared nervously at the workshop. They could not see the movements of the 4, but not long after, they witnessed the destruction of the 4 ballistae. Perhaps the ballistae originally had strict protective measures, but they were destroyed. The 4 of them directly destroyed the defenses. The 4 of them successfully withdrew. Baya and Shisuo were excited. The 2 apologetic knights were calm. "Well done." Everyone looked at them with admiration. Scab then canceled the invisibility spell on the heavenly messenger and let it fly directly into the workshop. It did not attract anything else. "Seems like it is safe." Scab canceled the summoning spell, and the heavenly messenger returned to its original plane. Everyone then entered in a single file. They began to plunder the workshop. There were fragments of the golems everywhere. Some had been baked into glass by the flames, some were covered in frost, and some had been directly smashed. From this, one could discern some of the methods used by the 3 saints. "Warning! Warning! Intruders have been detected in workshop number 8. Intruders have been detected in workshop number 8. When they were searching, the voice of the tower spirit suddenly sounded. Everyone was on guard. They retreated outside the door. Scab continued to release shields on the apologetic knights. Zhenjin, Zhonggu, and the others detected that the ballistic system is damaged. No defensive golems detected. Beginning to release the exterminators. The tower spirit continued. Then, everyone saw that on the 4 walls of the workshop, a mechanism was activated, revealing a few passages. The passage was very narrow, like a few books piled up. It was length and width. Everyone was on guard. But after a dozen breaths, nothing appeared in the passage. "Damn it! Scared me again." "Haha, it seems that the exterminators have been destroyed." But in the next moment, Zhenjin suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. He hurriedly jumped back. A strand of hair was cut in an instant and fell in front of Zhenjin's eyes. Ah! At the same time, his companion who had just laughed had his head split in half. The murderer who killed him, because of the splattering of blood, showed a slight outline, then disappeared from everyone's sight. What was that? It looked like a flying disc. "Be careful. These exterminators can be invisible." Many people shouted in panic and subconsciously huddled together. They had just destroyed the ballistae with invisibility, and now they were being attacked by invisible enemies. Not knowing the enemy's position, many people began to shoot arrows randomly. Scab hurriedly used several divine spells and finally detected the invisible exterminators. Under everyone's counterattack, for exterminators were destroyed one after another, turning into fragments that scattered on the ground. This round of attack directly killed 3 people, and the Sparrow fan was seriously injured. The exterminators were like 3-bladed fans. The blades were very sharp, and with a light flick, it could remove a person's head. Everyone entered the workshop again in fear, afraid that the voice of the tower spirit would appear again. But until the end of the rest, nothing happened. This kind of fan blade, even if I change into a scorpion shell, it will be difficult to resist. If I don't mutate, I will die after one successful sneak attack by the exterminators. While no one was paying attention, Zhenjin secretly tried using the fan blade. The result was not optimistic. Looks like I have to tell Scab the secret of my mutation. Zhenjin sighed. Chapter 163. Heading towards the center of the island was also the last chance for Zhenjin and the others since the new ship could not sail. To be able to meet Scab and the others who could use divine spells, this made Zhenjin feel very lucky. These days, Scab naturally knew that Zhenjin was a divine knight and that his former companions had gone berserk. However, Scab had never asked Zhenjin anything about the divine knight. This seemed to be a sign of goodwill. After the tragic battle in the ruins, the berserk beast had become a huge hidden danger in everyone's hearts. Scab's role was too crucial. Without him, they would not even be able to enter the underground alchemy factory. Zhenjin knew that he had to explain the situation to Scab in advance. Otherwise, at some point in the future, he would be forced to mutate. As a result, Scab and the others would misunderstand that he was a beast and suffer a blow from their companions. Even if they did not suffer a blow, Zhenjin's mutation would inevitably make Scab and the others suspicious. Our biggest enemy right now is the war traffickers. If we do not cooperate sincerely, there will be suspicion and scruples within our own ranks, causing us to be unable to use our full strength. It would be too stupid to do so. I don't want to see any of my companions get hurt before I do my best. I don't want to regret. With such thoughts and emotions, Zhenjin found Scab alone and said in a heavy tone, "Father, I need a confession." Scab smiled at him, his smile full of deep meaning. "Young holy knight, do you know? I have been waiting for this moment for a long time." "Father, I have sinned." Zhenjin frowned, revealing a painful expression. "Everyone in the world is sinful." Scab shook his head, comforting and encouraging gently. To be able to face your own sin, this is your courage, and is also your path to becoming a saint. Please allow me to pray to my Lord first. Zhenjin nodded. The confession began. The young knight half knelt on the ground, his heart heavy, facing Scab. Zhenjin said, "Ever since I woke up on the island, my prayers have never been answered by my Lord. I don't have Doqi, so I can only rely on my master. But my Lord never responded to me. I couldn't help but feel lost, disappointed, and even resentful. I'm guilty." Jiasha nodded. Zhenjin continued, "I thought that it wasn't my problem, but the unique environment of this island. It was a trick of the war traffickers that cut off my connection with my master. I underestimated my master's might. I actually thought that my master was weak. I blamed the problem on the outside world and did not really reflect on myself. I'm guilty." Scab sighed. "Child, now that you have realized and repented, half of your sins have already been eliminated." Zhenjin furrowed his brows and gritted his teeth in pain. When I saw Father's daily prayers being answered and instilled with divine power, I finally understood that this island does not prohibit divine arts. But I didn't dare to face such a truth. I was cowardly and let myself escape. I didn't dare to think about it deeply. I have misunderstood you, underestimated you, and even deceived you. Many times, in order to raise the morale of the troops, I had to use my master's name and pretend to be a divine knight. Actually, I'm not. In fact, from the beginning to the end, I never received a response from my master. My sins are grave." Scab nodded without any surprise. "Child, my master is a lost lamb, a pitiful and honorable person. I am happy and gratified to see you, because you are finding your original path. Anything else? Continue, good child. My Lord's eyes are all-knowing. Perhaps he has always been watching you, but you don't understand his hopeful gaze." Scab stroked Zhenjin's hair and used divine arts to soothe Zhenjin's painful and heavy emotions. Zhenjin felt a warmth in his heart. His body was bathed in a layer of pure, white holy light, making him feel like a tired traveler returning to his home. The young knight took a deep breath and opened his mouth. He wanted to tell the secret of his ability to control the mutation, but the words seemed to be stuck in his throat. He took another deep breath and opened his mouth again, but he still couldn't speak. Jinjin's breath became hurried and slightly chaotic. His heart seemed to be pressed by a mountain, and the holy light that enveloped his body seemed thin. There's a big situation. At this time, ZD's voice suddenly came from afar. Then, the apologetic knight, Xiongdun, responded, "Please stop, President ZD. The priest is confessing for the Lord Jinjin." After being interrupted like this, Jinjin's courage, which he had worked so hard to summon up, disappears. He was crushed by the pressure in his heart and could only sigh deeply. "No more, priest. That's all I can say." Scab stood in place and looked down at the half-kneeling Jinjin. After a moment of silence, he said, "Okay, I understand." Then he bowed his head and held the holy emblem on his chest with both hands. "My lord, the great Shengming Emperor, my god. You are the god of hope, you are the god of victory, you are the god of light. At this moment, I bring the holy knight Jinjin to you. Only you know his heart. I am powerless to change Jinjin. Only you can. I beg you to open Jinjin and help him understand what made him leave you. I beg you to make Jinjin repent and stir up his desire to be reconciled with you. I beg you to make him hate sin. I beg you to do everything you need to break his cowardice and bigotry. But I beg you to do it in a gentle way. I beg you to bring experience into Jinjin's life and encourage him to return to you." After saying all this, Scab bent down and stretched out his hand to help Jinjin up. "Child, you must have confidence in yourself. You must have confidence in our Lord. He is tolerant and benevolent. He can embrace the ocean and the sky." Scab's attitude was always gentle, like an old father. His words had a deeper meaning. Jinjin's hesitant expression was also very obvious. Jinjin nodded, and the two left the corner side by side. ZD was stopped by the apologetic knight, Xiongdun. When she saw Jinjin and Scab come out, she said with a dignified expression, "The person in charge of scouting is back. The situation in front is very unusual." ZD then narrated the information in detail. Scab and Jinjin were shocked and looked at each other. Not long after, everyone came to the entrance of the ruins. Obviously, a great battle had taken place here. The battle was very fierce. Previously, Jinjin and the others had passed through several production workshops. The degree of destruction had become more and more serious. Here, the original metal passage had completely disappeared and was replaced by a huge hole. Before entering the hole, the astonishing heat inside hit them in the face. The person who had acted as a scout before was cautious and did not rashly enter the hole. Scab and Jinjin discussed for a while, then used a divine spell. The person who had been scouting returned to report the information and was shocked to the point of incoherence. Everyone sneaked into the hole. Inside was a huge battlefield, almost the size of a town. Dark red light filled everything. The ground and the dome were bumpy and uneven. Fragments of the golems could be seen everywhere, and there were traces of blood left behind by the wounded saints. There were traces of battle everywhere. Almost half of the battlefield had turned into magma. It was precisely because of the rolling magma that the dark red light and the terrifying heat was produced. If not for the divine spell, elemental endurance, ordinary people would not be able to breathe normally. The other half of the battlefield, where people could stop and walk, was filled with a large number of golems. There are a lot of garrison golems. There's also a big guy. Everyone hid behind a huge rock, and under the protection of a divine spell, they temporarily hid their figures. After sizing up the battlefield, their expressions were solemn. After the first workshop, the survivors encountered the gargoyles. These golems were at least twice as strong as the transport golems. In order to destroy a garrison golem, the entire team had to do their best. At a glance, one could tell that there were more than 10 garrison golems on the battlefield. What attracted everyone's attention the most was a huge monster. It was also a golem, but not in human form. It had a dragon's head, a pig's body, elephant's legs, and a python's tail. Some of the garrison golems stood in place, while others kept moving. There seemed to be no pattern to their patrol route. And this monster golem was 6 meters tall. It kept opening its huge mouth and swallowing the golem fragments on the ground. The tough golem fragments were chewed into even more pieces in its mouth. There was a huge battle here, and the intensity was beyond our imagination. This should have been an important defensive area for the alchemy factory, but all the facilities were destroyed. The battle went deep into the ground, and even magma was produced. It's too scary. There are golem fragments all over the ground. There are thousands of destroyed golems. Did you notice? Some of the fragments are very special. They look like adamantine. They should be stronger than the garrison golems. We haven't encountered them yet. Who won? I think it's a sanctuary-level powerhouse. It's also possible that they all died in battle and their bodies were taken away. These active garrison golems and this big guy are obviously cleaning up the battlefield. The fact that the war trafficker could make alchemy cannons and sell them meant that mass production of gold-level equipment was completely within the scope of his ability. Based on this, it was also very likely that he could mass-produce gold-level alchemy golems. Although the sanctuary level was powerful, if the number of gold-level enemies reached a certain level, they could still pose a huge threat. How we get past them? The garrison golems have true vision. Everyone was troubled. It's impossible to get past them. If we force our way through, just 3 garrison golems will be enough to put us in danger. Let's go back and take a detour. This suggestion was approved by the vast majority of people. However, SCA, Zhenjin, Zhonggu, and the others were all hesitating. It's a little strange. Zhonggu said, "There are so many defensive forces here. Why don't they transfer some of them to eliminate us? The Tower Genie has already discovered our group of intruders." What's so strange about that? The apologetic knight, Xiongdun, curled his lips. Everyone knows that the Tower Genie is already half broken. Sir Priest, why don't we use extreme vision again? Zhenjin suggested. SCA nodded and quietly activated the divine spell. After a moment, his face was pale. I only see magma. The dark red magma is rushing towards us. Let's retreat and take another route. Xiongdun also suggested. SCA was about to nod when suddenly there was an explosion in his ears. Roar! An explosive dragon roar came from the magma. At the same time, huge golden light pillars shot out from the magma. A giant dragon shadow appeared in the magma. This is the Flame Dragon King. Zhenjin and the others were shocked. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.